it provides the general education teacher strategies that you can support English language learners, being, TPR, which is total physical response, visual aids, graphics, various strategies that in addition to your regular instruction, that you can support those students who have varying needs. So it's a combination of their ELA time, which is 120 minutes of structured literacy, and then they would have anywhere from 40 to 80 minutes, minimally 40 minutes every day of ESL instruction. And we have 2.5 ESL instructors at the elementary level.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have another question. Sorry.
Okay.
So the literacy coaches, would that be like professional development for teachers, or would it have an effect on their evaluations? How would that go about?
So no, wouldn't have an impact on their evaluation. And there are several different models. I think the models that we looked at when we visited some of these higher performing districts were really that teacher coach in the classroom. And the job of the literacy coach is to really be looking at what's innovative, what's really trending in terms of high quality literacy instruction and student learning, student engagement, instructional technology. So to be able to have a coach come in and work with you, whether it's in the class, out of the class, we would provide release time for teachers to work with the coach. But that coach is always staying on top of his or her game in terms of what they need to provide for the teacher. So there's also that piece, providing professional development for the coach. But, teachers in the elementary world have, the ELA, reading and writing, they have math, they have science and social studies, and they do a little bit of health in their science, and they teach a lot of content areas. And so the one thing that we know is that the core of everything they learn is literacy. If you're not literate, all of those other subject areas falter. So that's what we need to attend to first and foremost. So when teachers have that support and the research, through that program evaluation, we provided a good deal of research. The research really proves the value of having that coach, both through teacher surveys and looking at student achievement. So I think it's really something that would be worthwhile for our district to look at over the next 2 years. Any other questions on the goals, progress? Okay, so I will work on modifying one of those goals and bring it back next month to the board. The only other item on the curriculum agenda is the CTAC meeting dates, the Curriculum and Technology Advisory Committee. Part of the strategic plan in 2017 required that we develop a Curriculum and Technology Advisory Committee, and we did in September of 2017. And we've gone from meeting once every month through the school year to having less meetings with more time. On that attachment, you can see that some of the goals of the Curriculum and Technology Committee. We have members that are administrators, we have teachers, we have other staff, we have community members, and I wanted to just, again, invite the board to participate. The meeting dates are only 4 meeting dates this year, and I think the committee has asked for some board representation. We have had board members in the past, I think 1 or 2 that have regularly attended, but I think it's a great way to really see what's ongoing. And so when we come to that presentation, which I believe we're going to try to present in February, the board already has 1 or 2 members that has been a part of the process. This year we're really focusing on the ways that the district is supporting social and emotional learning. Last year we did kind of a broad interview, and I'm looking at Mr. Krupa because he was part of the CTAC committee. We surveyed in 4 different areas and found where the district was strong and then where the district was needing to support students better. And one area was social and emotional learning. And so this year we're going to really focus our work on crafting questions that get good information from students about what is it that they feel we're doing well and what are some areas that they still need to have more support. We have 3 different social emotional or SEL vendors coming to show us what they what their programs are about. We kicked off staff development today and also tomorrow at all schools with social emotional learning staff development for our staff. So we're really putting a heavy emphasis on not just the content areas and the hard skills, but really the social emotional piece and how we're supporting students. So you can see the 4 dates there. There are going to be some location changes. I was notified some of the buildings have already tagged those spaces. So please let me know if you're interested, if you'd like to attend. The first meeting, it will be September 25th. It will be at the high school, but it will not be in the media center. It will be in the conjoining rooms B6 and B7 across from, I believe it's across from the gym. And our focus there that day will be really looking at last year's surveys and really starting to prepare the surveys for October, November. We're going to have a student panel there of high school students that can help us work on those questions. And we'd also like to put out a survey to the intermediate school students as well to try to get some input from the students there. Okay? Any questions on CTAC?
I do. I have a question with regards to the community involvement, and that's kind of been inconsistent. I don't know how we are approaching getting more members, but by my speaking to the point, hopefully there will be people, if you're open to it, Dr. Gleason, that
Absolutely.
will reach out, because this is a important method or way to contribute your thoughts and feelings about the direction of curriculum, although there's a agenda in terms of social emotional learning being the focus. It's a very open forum, I found, in participating, and technology was brought in at some point when I was participating as a community member. So there's a lot of great people out there that have been willing to step forward and speak on many issues. This would be another way to do that in a very constructive manner.
One of the things that we can do is we can promote through our district Facebook page. Many of us have Twitter, so I can put that out through our Twitter page. And then I'm thinking that maybe we can do a Blackboard Connect, although that only goes to our district families. I can put some language in there that parents are, encouraged to share this with community members. It really is helpful to have all perspectives when we're looking to build those relationships, and I think there's also many partnerships that can be built with the community. And when we're talking about meeting students' social and emotional needs, and when you have community members there that often bring ideas that we're not thinking of necessarily within the schools.
Another interesting point that I'd like to share, I don't know if anybody saw the Asbury Park Press, but there was an article about the needs of students, and I didn't see one thing in the article about academics. It was all about safety and social emotional learning. There were about 5 or 6 points, and this is a need that transcends socioeconomic or community specificity, if you will. So parents are a great resource in terms of telling the schools what they're hearing from their kids at home. That's if your kids talk to you. But I encourage everybody that is interested to reach to Dr. Gleason, and I think you'll find it to be a positive experience.
Thanks, Mr. Krupa.
Well, one other thing I just wanted to mention too, and I don't know if we've done this in the past. Do we put anything or post anything over at the library?
It's interesting you say that, because we were contacted by the Wall Public Library head librarian and asked if we could begin to start partnering more on summer reading lists. And we've always had contact, but I think that there's still room to grow that partnership. So that might be another area that we have to think about, where we can increase our publicity about some of these community committees that we're looking for their input.
Yeah, I just think that, not that I'm trying to stereotype anybody, but folks that might want to come to curriculum meetings that might have not have students in the district, maybe folks from the library
Yep.
might be a good pool to grab those people from. And plus, if you look at, if you go to the library and you look, like, there's little tear-offs and stuff like that, like, you know, half the stuff's torn off, so, and it looks like it's like new stuff, so I don't think that it's been there since like January, so I think people generally read,
Sure.
you know, all those little cork boards, so to
Yep, we
speak,
could
and
definitely
everything.
put together a flyer,
Okay.
and then, of course, it's on the website, but we want to push it out, not have to have people come and find it.
Yeah, yep.
Have we ever done anything, any kind of advertisement in the newspaper? You know, similar to, and I'm going to use this because it's happened a lot this year, you know, the notices for board vacancies, you know, you have that nice little square box in the newspaper. Maybe that's something we could look into. I mean, certainly money worthwhile spending in the newspaper to advertise something like this, to try to reach a different pool of people.
Sure.
So,
Yep, we can
Yes.
check that out.
And like CoStar, all the special events and stuff like that that
but
they
not
list
even
for-
that, you know, in the wall section, you know,
Yeah.
you know, when Brian puts in the ad for the vacancy or special meetings, you know, it's right there, so when you go to the wall section, you know, I think that would probably be, honestly, probably better than our website, because the only people that come to our website is our audience. You know, we're trying to reach a different audience, so that's really where we need to reach out to.
Yeah.
Okay, great, we'll pursue that, too. Any other questions on CTEC? Okay. That is my agenda. Thank you, Mr.
All
Edmuzia.
right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, we are going to now move on to finance and facilities. And just for the time being, for the rest of the year, I am going to remain as chair, because many board members have other commitments that, here on the board, and other things going on that might be a little tough, but we are going to continue to meet as a committee of the whole, so everybody can see it, everybody can ask questions. I can tell you, and I'm sure you've all heard, a lot of positive feedback. More people are watching online. This weekend, people were telling me they were sitting in a hot tub watching the last meeting. So I'm a little jealous, so if you're sitting in a hot tub right now, I'm jealous. All right, so let's
Turn up
begin.
the jets.
Mr. Smythe, enterprise account.
Okay, first item is the enterprise account updates. However, school hasn't started, so there are no reports to provide other than, you know, that both the food service and the WRAP program are prepared for the start of the school year, and we're looking for, again, another successful year.
And the audit's not done yet, so we don't have those final numbers.
Correct.
Could I just add also onto there, Mr. Smythe, that we do have currently, I got an update today, we have 340 students currently enrolled in WRAP, and parents have been invoiced. So that's about average from last year, roughly, but we do have 340 currently enrolled.
Any questions on?
Nope.
You want? Facility use applications, as part of policy, applications that will extend beyond 4 months come to the Board of Education for approval. Not each one of these applications are actually for that duration. However, there's two groups. It's wall rec basketball and wall traveling basketball. So as not to mislead individuals to think that perhaps some of their applications aren't coming to the board. We just included all of them for each group, and there could be more coming in. With regard to any potential conflicts, obviously school programs take precedent, so the high school gymnasium use will be dictated by the athletic schedule at the high school. That'll be provided by the athletic director. So we approve these, but we also approve these contingent that any conflicts, they would be rectified. We take precedent, and then we allow wall rec and wall traveling basketball to kind of work out their schedule so that they best utilize the facilities, and they tend to do that. You'll notice that wall traveling doesn't happen on Wednesdays, wall rec does happen on Wednesdays. There may be a conflict when it starts in January, but they have, through the years, have always worked it out. And there's no cost to either group. Nothing on facility use. OPA requests, we currently have received 17 requests to date. 9 are currently open. A few of those were provided as extensions, only because of the duration and the amount of information, but the other ones are open within their time frame. And there has not been a significant amount of time provided as of yet to date based on these requests. However, we are still in the process of responding to them.
And how's the Oprah log and hours coming? Do you,
It's being maintained.
it is, okay.
But again, we've only had 17, 9 are still open, so, majority of them are not complete.
Right.
So as we get into the year, we'll provide that report with all the hours that are included in providing responses. Facility project updates. Bob, you want to, Mr. Romano?
Thanks, Brian. First item today, we repaired 2 condensing fan motors on the condensing units for the high school north gym air handling unit. Paving at Old Mill was also finished today. The front parking lot area was completed. The back play area will not be completed until next month, scheduled for October 9th. Central School, the main entrance door will be getting removed and replaced. That date is to be determined. Still trying to wait on the lead time of the new materials, shooting for end of September. Primary masonry repairs, that work is in progress and should be wrapped up tomorrow. Air conditioning installs. Right now, I spoke with the contractor right before this meeting. He assured me that West Belmar and Allenwood will be 100% cooling at start of school. Old Mill, most of the units will be up and running and cooling, and as well as the high school, most of the units will be cooling. All the unit ventilators will be set and in place, but all units will not, 100% of the units will not be cooling, but most will. Room C14 is the priority room due to a student with an IEP that will be up and running for start of school.
Did he give you a percentage of what was going to be up and running and what wouldn't be up and running?
He did not know.
Did he tell you when he anticipates everything to be fully completed?
Yeah, he'll be working through the week, so by next week, we should have everything up and running, fully completed.
The engineer is going to be going out there tomorrow morning to do an assessment, and whatever update he provides, we can make that available.
Okay. So you think he'll get back to you tomorrow with it? You can
Yes.
send it out tomorrow?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So I have, well, two things. One thing I don't believe you discussed. They did the repair work in the front of Allenwood School. The exit going out, the county was out there.
Yes.
So they did correct that big, massive pothole that was,
Yeah,
probably causing some damage to cars and buses. They did a nice job with that.
Yeah, they did.
And I know, and I forgot about it until you just start talking about doors, but walking out of this school, the front doors, it looks like the whole bottom's rotted away because you can actually see it move. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
And, okay, is that any time going to be scheduled? Have you looked at it, pricing,
Yeah,
anything?
we looked at it, we priced it out. I think it was I want to say somewhere near $20,000 to replace that.
That whole,
The whole section, it's the whole front entrance has to go. But Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, did we have the architect look at that? Are you aware?
Well, that's part of their feasibility
Okay.
assessment, so if that's work, that's going to be included in their evaluation.
okay, so there is no plan as of right now to jump on that? It's not determined to be that big of a deal?
As of right now, no, but it is a high priority. We do have to, I'm going to contact the architect and, during his facility assessments, have him come back with his analysis of that. Because I think there's a lot going on there with separation with the concrete and the bottom saddle rotting out, so I want to get a good
Now,
assessment of it.
For the bottom settle to rot out, obviously, we know there must be a water problem.
Mm-hmm.
So when it rains, does water run towards the building, or has that been examined?
No, I haven't experienced that, no. I haven't experienced any flooding under there coming into the main foyer or anything.
Okay, so that's just, how old are those doors? Any idea?
I want to say they
Part of the
were put in
referendum. It was done in 2000.
That's it?
Yeah, that's a whole new front entrance.
We didn't really get that much use out of them. I mean, so there's got to be some kind of problem then. I mean, 2000, 19 years and the doors are already rotted out? I mean, that's not good.
No.
So there's got to be a reason. So, before we throw good money at something and replace it, we need to figure out why it's rotting. I mean, that's got to be a priority. So 20 years from now or less, we're not replacing the doors again because there's rot.
That's why it's part of the facility condition assessment rather than just replacing the
Yeah.
doors.
And then we discussed the work orders. Do you have, how many work order, any idea how many work orders are outstanding from this previous school year? Where that stands? And my other question to you too is, when work orders come in, are they individually numbered? Does it generate a number for them?
Yeah, each work order has a number assigned to it. As far as how many are outstanding, working there. When we're talking about work orders, I would just ask that you be very specific when you're asking for what work's done, due to the fact that there's a lot of different, statuses in there. Completed, work in progress, pending, parts on order.
Well, I mean, similar to the facilities project report. I mean, it's kind of almost the same thing.
Well, all I'm saying is if I print out work orders, you're going to get 500 to 600 work orders. So we can do an advanced search if we're looking for something in particular. Look at, let's say, work in progress at a certain school or 3 schools. We can do it that way. Well, we can filter them.
Well, I think what the board was looking for was just, a running list of the work orders that have come in and what their status is. So completed on whatever date, or waiting for parts, or we're not doing it now because of XYZ reason.
And that's fine. Just I would ask for dates. I mean, it goes back to 2002. So when are we looking to go back to?
Well,
I don't think we're going to,
No.
sorry. And we had a quick turnaround between our meeting last Tuesday
No,
and this meeting.
Absolutely, but
So
we didn't really discuss it in depth, so,
we need to find out what's the best way or the best report that we can obtain from the software that will provide the information that the board's going to be looking for.
Right.
Which shows, here are the current work orders, these are the ones that are outstanding, or the status of them, or this is what has been completed. Like, here's the outstanding from the prior year, or the ones that have started for July 1. We just need to see how best to present that, so it's actually usable and not just overwhelming and confusing.
okay.
But the goal is for hopefully next meeting, we'll be in a position where we can provide a report that shows the status of current work orders.
Okay, so clearly, we're not going to go back to 2002 because the board isn't really interested in stuff that's already completed unless there's stuff still pending from 2002, then that's a problem, which I don't think that is a problem, correct? No idea? Okay,
I would say,
probably not.
no, that's not the problem.
Okay. Trying to make light of the situation a little bit.
Understood.
so-
Excuse me.
okay. Yes.
I'm familiar with School Dude. I've used it for many years, and I know you're going to be able to get what you need from it. I think one of the things, though, that came loud and clear to me from the public and the board's commentary last time is that we want to be sure that all staff members are comfortable with the fact that they can go to a specific person, whether it's the first secretary in each school, the supervisor, I don't care who it is, but that person needs to be identified, and that person needs to be instructed in the regard that it is the board's wish that we are receptive to any request from any staff member about a need. And part of this process will be a learning curve, because what you have happen, and I've seen this, is people put in things that are very not correct to be put into that system. However, it does have filters, as you said, and it does have the ability to identify something as urgent or an emergency. So that's just an example of how, and it's very extensive. It has every category: ventilation, electric, moving. All of these things are identified on the homepage of School Dude. So more important is that every staff member knows about this system, and there is follow-up. It automatically notifies you by email that your request went in. And that's one of the things that I would think would be very important, because the first secretary enters it with her profile, but if it can't be streamlined to the, goes to the individual, when she receives that it was entered, it should be forwarded to the staff member that reported it. That will do a lot to reassure people.
So the way this program works, I kind of understand. So is it the individual teacher or staff member that enters it, or is it one person in a building that does it?
The way we currently do it, the custodial supervisor will enter the work orders, and that will go to my department. So if a teacher has a concern in a room, it will go to the custodial supervisor, who then enters that into School Dude as a work order. So the teachers don't enter them.
So they verbally tell the supervisor what's going on?
Yes.
And it's only the supervisor they would tell. They wouldn't tell just someone underneath.
In most cases, sometimes they'll tell the principal. But it goes to the person in the building that submits the work request is the custodial supervisor.
Okay. So one of the things I've heard, with the whole system is that some people feel these requests fall into a black hole. So if I'm relaying it to the custodial supervisor and he's entering it in, then it goes to your department. Is there a way for your department to notify the person that initially made that, the teacher or the paraprofessional, whoever it might be, that we received, it worked its way through the system, we received what you, what the request is, and we are looking into it? Or as Mr. Krupa just said, that what you put in doesn't necessarily fit what this program is for, or if they enter, I don't know what it could be, but
The only way you could do that would be to put the teacher on as a user. So now.
well, why couldn't somebody put it in the notes that it was Mr. Jones, that his classroom that made this request?
Well, it would be put in the description of the work that's requested. So the custodial supervisor will say, classroom 215 has a leak. And then that goes to me, and then it goes to, the contractor, whoever's going to fix it. When it gets completed, or updated, I should say, it'll go to, rerouted to the custodial supervisor that will see what the status is on the work being done.
But the question is, the teacher, they have to know,
Well,
I know.
Can I interrupt? Because what would need to happen for that is the custodial supervisor, whoever entered it, would then have to notify that staff member, because the system automatically, operations doesn't send something out. As soon as the status is changed on a work order, an email is automatically sent out to whoever entered it. So that's why it would go to the custodial supervisor. That custodial supervisor can then, once they receive that status change email, can either forward it or send an email to that staff member, because the system automatically sends it to the requester. And that's why Mr. Romano's saying that if we make every teacher a user, they would enter their own work orders, and then they would receive the response back. Where when
Can I
we-
jump in? So speaking from my own personal experience in my building, that's teachers do put in their own work orders. So we are able to write down specifically what is going on, what areas we need addressed, and then we receive feedback. So I'll know it's in progress. I'll know somebody will come in to check in on it, and that way I know it's being followed through. So what would it take for all the teachers to be able to submit their own work order through School Dude?
You would have to be added as a user. The teacher would have to be added as a user in the School Dude system, so they have access to submit a work request.
I feel like that would be beneficial to them, so that way they know that their areas are being addressed. I mean, it could be even something in the hallway that they've seen. It doesn't have to be their immediate classroom, but that way it's, more eyes on the building, and, really keeping everything accountable.
Absolutely.
Mr. Romano, who can view the work orders for any particular building?
Obviously, I can. Custodial supervisors can. All the custodial supervisors in every building can view a work order for any building. Some of the principals can.
Some, but I mean,
Yeah,
but see,
depending on if they
so-
use it or not.
so here's the thing. That doesn't really necessarily solve the problem with communication. So what me and the rest of the 5 other remaining members of this board want, and hopefully the 3 members that come on, is we want better communication across every line in this district. We don't want any, and we said at the last meeting, Mr. Krupa made reference to it tonight, we don't want any staff member anywhere in this district, no matter what their job is, to feel like they can't speak up and say something is wrong, something doesn't look right. Like that kind of nonsense will not be tolerated by anybody here. And I'm not directing that at anybody here, but people feel that way because they've personally told me, and I know they've told other board members. So that is absolutely not going to continue. What is going to continue going forward is communication on all levels, with staff members, with the public. People are going to get so sick of the transparency here that when they see a ghost, it's going to look like a wall. That's what I want, and I think that's the only way this district is going to move forward, and we're going to build community support for the things that we need, the infrastructure. So, again, the million-dollar question is, how do we make sure every staff member is made aware of when there's a problem? Custodial supervisor, maybe a principal knows, maybe a principal doesn't know. I mean, to me, it would be insane that all the principals aren't aware of everything that could be potentially going on in their schools, because, I mean, they're the captain of that ship. So I mean, immediately, I would say every principal should have to be added, even every supervisor in a school. I mean, you know, this is the administrative staff that should be aware that there's a hole in a ceiling or something's going on. But more to that, the teachers need to know what's going on and where things stand, because then they're more vested in what's going on. Not that our staff is invested, but now they're part of another aspect of what we're doing. And I think that's very important for what we're trying to do here.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I appreciate what you contributed in terms of teachers, because that was something that I experienced a different level of congruence with one supervisor giving his password to all the teachers, and they were entering, and then others being told, no, don't do that. And they became the vehicle for submitting that. And I don't want to overwhelm the maintenance department, and I do trust that the custodial maintenance supervisors in the building would take pride and ownership of this process, and some way that we can find either teachers entering or this individual entering. Like I said, it was first secretary in my experience, and also supervisors. But the report function is very comprehensive. I think you even get to see notes from the craftsman. Sometimes it's a plumber that has to respond, and updates with parts. This is not a correct order to submit this way. You know, for example, if somebody vomited in the hallway, well, that does not need a work order, but believe it or not, people would do that. Maybe to avoid talking to somebody. But anyway, I think it's really important to understand that there's going to be a learning curve with this, and it's not just on the system, it's also going to be on regaining the trust in terms of a response to these things. I am very disturbed that the principals don't know, and that was even said, that they aren't all receiving that report
Let me just say
weekly
this,
or monthly.
if I can interject, and I don't mean to interrupt. The principals and the custodial supervisors do a great job in meeting regularly to go over work orders, what are in progress, what have been completed, and what are not completed. So they're both on the same page as to what's going on in their buildings. So if you got the message that the principals are unaware of what's being submitted through School Dude, that's my fault, but that's not the case. They are well aware.
But you did say that.
Yeah, Ralph, I did say that, but you're holding me to something that you're taking out of context.
Well,
And
no,
we're,
no,
and
no,
we're
no,
going,
hold
wait,
on. It's
I'm not done,
it's not
Ralph,
coming
Ralph,
out of
I'm not done.
context.
And you're
I mean, you
going,
said that.
you're going to something now where you're trying to fit a narrative that people are left in the dark, and that's not what I said.
I didn't say you said that. I said
you just
people
did.
have said
You
that
just
to
did.
me. No, I didn't say.
Okay. What I'll say
Okay.
is that the principals and the supervisors are both on the same page, and I think if you asked any principal in the district, they would tell you the same thing about what work is being completed in the schools. If you want the teachers to enter work orders, I'm fully on board with that. That's your decision. If that's what you want to happen, I will do it. But keep in mind, there's a lot of teachers in the district. There's going to be a lot of work orders that come in through that system, and the maintenance department is going to be inundated with just reviewing work orders to
Well-
see what is necessary, what's a high priority, what's a low priority, what's a medium priority. So, but again, I'll do what you want.
So in response to that, if people are going to now send in work orders, does that mean that there's really work that needs to be done? Or are they just, for the sake of it, sending in stuff? So two different things. I mean, is there really a need for it? Or are people just sending stuff in? So,
No, if they're sending it in, I would say there's a need for it. There's a concern that they have, and of
Okay.
course, we would address that and we would look at it. You
all
know,
right, so,
and-
so just to get back, we'll back up for a second. Is there a way, because the whole purpose of this is that people are made aware of what's going on. So Brian just said when the work order is submitted, then an email is automatically generated. Is there a way to generate an email, add a second email onto it where it goes out to two people, or is it only limited to one
Or
person?
just CC the teacher who initially
right.
spoke
Can-
to the
Just a point
custodial supervisor?
The system doesn't know who that teacher is because that teacher's referenced in the notes, or it's a classroom number. It's not one of the users. Now, again, if we're looking to address the communication, and we can do that through the custodial supervisors and the building principals. They can view the status of the work orders in their building. They can print reports for their building. If the goal is to figure out the best way to communicate to the staff, we can do that, whether it be operations providing a report on a weekly basis, or the custodial supervisor providing a report for their particular building that identifies, these are the work orders we have for the building currently, these are open, these are pending, need additional information, and these are the ones that were complete. You know, that, and maybe they provide that report, they make that available on their website so that the teachers want to check the status of one of their work orders, they can just look for the report on a web page or on a shared doc for that building.
Can I
Okay.
just jump in? Teachers have a lot going on during the day, so if they're going to take time out of their day to write something on School Dude as a work order, it's going to be a top priority for them. So I don't think they're going to, waste 15 minutes of their prep time logging on and writing something if it really didn't matter. So I think giving them the access to being able to report something, a concern, maybe it's trial and error. Maybe we try it out for this year, give them the opportunity to express some areas. Yeah, will we see a lot more coming through? Probably, because probably they're going to feel more comfortable to put in a work order rather than voicing their concern to a principal or a custodian who may seem busy during the day. So this might be a good opportunity to really give teachers the opportunity to express their concerns, feel heard, and then validate it by going through and fixing the areas of concern for them.
I agree, but why don't we do this? Since you guys are the professionals, why don't you go back, think about it, and come back to us with your best game plan?
Okay, we'll meet with the building principals and the custodial supervisors and see what they'd like to do.
Yeah.
As well.
And
That's
see,
fine.
is it a question of forwarding an email? Is it a question of adding users, adding additional users? Just come back to us. Thank you.
Not to delay it or anything like that, but maybe when you're speaking to the principals and custodial supervisors, maybe they could get a gauge, from the teachers in terms of, like you said, somebody might not have the time to put in a work order, might be more comfortable to go to the custodial supervisor, or somebody might say, oh, great, I have this opportunity to put in what I've been looking for. Not saying that that's happening, but just what happens and overwhelm the system. So maybe they could also get a gauge from the teachers of how they feel or at least give them an option to say, you can do this, or you can do it yourself. Does that seem fair, or? Okay.
So it seems to me that all teachers can't be well-versed in plumbing, electrical, and all these other things that are going to happen. So there's got to be a way to take what their problem is and transform it into the maintenance people so that they understand what they're trying to tell them and then fix the problem that way. But anything other than that is utopian.
Number 5.
Number 5, application for change in instructional space. We have 3 applications. One is for Allenwood School. We're converting a storage area for use as a safe room. There was a description of the rationale that was provided that will be used when we submit to the Department of Education. And there's 2 for Central School. One, speech is being relocated to a new space, and then a resource room is being relocated to the space that was previously occupied by speech. So that's a change of use, so we'll be submitting to the County Executive Superintendent for approval. No, it's gonna be,
Brian, just for everybody, can you clarify the term safe room? Like in terms of, we're not putting like 100 kids in a safe room for like a lockdown, right? This is for more like individual kids who are having a rough day or things going on, right?
it
So-
would be for a single student,
Yeah, exactly. I just to clarify that.
and it's to help them to de-escalate whatever the situation may be.
Correct.
And in further detail, the room would have padded walls and floor. And it would allow the student to be separated from other classmates. Any questions, comments on change of use? No. Okay, lead testing, statement of assurance has been submitted to the county. I didn't know if there was any questions, or Mr. Romano, if you wanted to expand on the lead testing statement of assurance?
No, other than that, it's just a requirement to be submitted every year. As everybody knows here, we test all our outlets, drinking outlets, for the presence of lead on a yearly basis. And part of that requirement is to submit the statement of assurances.
And we used a municipality for that, correct? Wall
Yes, we
Township?
do, yes.
Okay, item 7, Central School trailers. As an update, the open areas of the T111 siding have been replaced with pressure-treated plywood, as well as the perimeter skirt around both trailers. So everything that was open has been sealed up. That was done last Friday by our in-house staff, and a temporary construction fence is scheduled to be installed tomorrow morning, and completed tomorrow as well. And the orange temporary fence will be removed. Is that correct? Okay. 2 things. One, I provided a memorandum, basically with what transpired over the summer, along with all the quotes that were obtained, or with one instance quote that was not obtained. To give it's basically a summary of what has been discussed at the last 2 meetings as far as the process of attempting to get the work done on the trailers. I don't know if there was any questions regarding that, but also with the idea of what we're going to be doing with the trailers going forward. Obviously, we're not going to be using them for classroom space. The discussion was using them for an alternative purpose. One area suggested was if we need to provide office space, specifically for the transportation department, do we hold them in abeyance right now to see what transpires with regard to that, and then make a determination on what repairs would need to be made, as well as the cost to relocate the trailers. What we can do is obtain from the architect, I don't know if it would just be in the form of a proposal, or at least an estimate for, the cost to relocate and set them up at a different location, or a cost to discard them if we were going to remove them.
I thought this evening we were going to have a couple different numbers. One, if we were just going to get rid of them and put the property back to the way it was, a cost with that, a cost of if we were to repair them in place and use them as an office space, and then a price to, again, to fix them and then relocate them someplace else. So could we?
We can look to obtain that from the architect, but we have not received that as of yet. And I think part of it's just the turnaround time
Okay,
from last week that
all right. So
we
until.
can look to have that for October.
Okay. So until then, the air conditioning is still going on those rooms. That's what should be going on? I don't know.
I would say yes, but we can look to discuss that with Partner Engineering, our environmental consultant, see what is the best, best approach to that. Do we leave the air conditioning on? Do we open windows and air them out, and shut the air conditioning down? I mean, hopefully we're going to move into cooler temperatures and we won't need that. But the first step was to secure them,
Right.
which was done. With regard to the plywood, the second part of that was a more permanent fence from the orange fence, and that'll be going in tomorrow.
Oh.
And that's a rental,
What kind of fence is it going to be? The
chain link, correct?
Is it the typically that you see around construction sites where it's got the base on it and they connect together? Okay,
Probably not a top rail, it'll just be
right. It's
Posts with
right, and they
6-foot chain
lock
link
together.
fence.
It's individual sections. Okay.
Now, how much space between the buildings and the kind of 7 feet?
Off the top of my head, maybe 3 feet.
That's fine.
Well, depending on the location, because we have there's wooden walkways, platforms coming off the backs of both sets of classroom trailers, so it'll be at least 2 to 3 feet off of that. And basically be between those landings and the sidewalk on the one side. On the other, on the back side, we're not really restricted by anything, because we don't want to, reduce the means of egress from the building where the sidewalk is. So it'll be in between those, which, what the exact distance, I wouldn't know at this point. And then it would be between the trailers and the playground area. So there'll be sufficient area to maneuver around, as well as maneuver within the building as well, and you shouldn't be able to reach the building through the fence, but it's a 6-foot fence.
So the way it's going to be set up, it will not block any egress in case of like fire drill or anything like that?
Yeah.
Good.
And then, do you anticipate having numbers for us for our next meeting, or even the
Yes.
next FNF or board meeting, you think?
I can
Don't know.
only ask the professionals.
I got you. Okay.
I mean, the meeting's on the 24th, and, they may have additional questions
Okay.
in order to do that, so I may be coming back to the board and have them attend the FNF meeting in October.
Okay. Yes, the air conditioning issue, you'll find out from them what the best course is for now. Keep it running, shut it off, open windows, put heat on, whatever
Yes.
it might be.
So just to be clear, nobody's going into those classrooms, like no teachers, no
Oh.
students?
Actually, which you just reminded me, I had another note. So, we mentioned at the last meeting, when are the teachers going to be able to get their personal belongings out? Because they haven't done that yet, or have they done that?
I have a meeting tomorrow morning with the principal to review that. We have inventory, so we're gonna have to discuss how we're gonna
Well,
proceed with that.
so, I mean, so 2 of the classrooms, the air quality was fine, right?
Yes,
So there should be no reason why somebody couldn't just go in there and get their belongings, correct?
correct.
Okay.
Although,
Nope.
I don't know that we would do that at this point.
Okay.
You know,
Well, I
for
mean,
those 2 rooms, we could probably go in. I probably would not have them go in. But what I think we should do is talk to Partner Engineering and have our consultant advise us how best to go in there and remove the personal items. Only because, you know, there's the practicality of it. Like, if you look at those 2 classrooms, like you said, you should be able to go in there, remove them. You know what, we'll clean them. You know, is there anything visible? Regardless, we'll clean them anyway. But we're gonna have to address it for the other 2 classrooms, which, again, I'm not the consultant. From a practical standpoint, I'm thinking he's gonna say, just like he kind of alluded to or commented at the meeting, was, you know, there's certain things that are covered up and protected. You would have to basically do a visual inspection of them. But whatever protocol or procedure he gives us for those 2 classrooms, I would do in all 4 classrooms.
so with that, can we have him come back out when it's time to, I guess, remove the stuff and let him, since he's the expert and we're paying him, let him visually look at everything as we take it out and say, yep, this is good, maybe put this aside, just to make sure we're not doing anything we
Yes.
shouldn't. Okay.
Absolutely.
And also with that, are the desks still in those 2 classrooms?
Correct,
And they're not needed inside the building?
correct.
Okay, so at some point, we will take them out and clean them and have them as extra desks at some point.
Again, that would be, we'll take the direction of the
Right.
consultant on how to proceed with that.
Okay. All right,
Absolutely.
perfect. Oh, so actually, since we're still on talking about the trailers, the community, if you're not aware, they've been great. They're collecting books and different things to replace what teachers have lost. I mean, which is absolutely incredible, and it's fantastic. We as a district, what are we going to do to make these teachers whole again? Because they've bought a lot of this stuff with their own money. I know there was, you guys allocated money to them so they could go buy stuff, correct? Is that true?
Sort of.
Sort
yes.
of, okay. So,
There's budget line items for classroom supplies.
Right.
We told them, through the building principal, to identify what they needed to start school, and they were allowed to
Okay.
enter purchase orders against those classroom supply accounts in order to make those purchases.
okay, makes sense. So teachers that, again, collections are being done for books, but, you know, the teachers have specific books that they purchase and they use for different reasons. How are we going to address that? Are we going to let them reorder books that now probably you're going to have
Are
to go
they
in the car?
personal books you're referring to?
Yes, that they have in the classroom.
I think one way or the other, yes. I mean, I don't know that that decision's ultimately up to me. I mean, that could be a decision by the Board of Education. If Partner Engineering says that we cannot use these books, and if we're gonna take the carte blanche approach to, hey, if it's paper, we're not going to reuse it.
Well, I mean, and just,
But in that
again,
case, then I
that's
would
kind
say,
of what I got
my
from
recommendation
him.
would be is yes, then we look to replenish those
Okay.
supplies for those teachers. But again, that would come to a board discussion.
So I'm willing to have that discussion now, since we're on trailers. I feel that if they have books, that we should be making them whole again and letting them, you know, put in purchase orders to purchase books they have, whether, you know, if you want to take an inventory of all the different books that they have and, you know, give them the opportunity to reorder the same books, and if those books are out of print, not around anymore, let them get something that's comparable to that. I think that's very fair. Yes.
We're also working with the building principal, who's been speaking with the teachers to try to get some idea of the easiest part first is to establish what are the district purchased textbooks, softcover books that are part of the curriculum. And we're already working on POs for that to restore them to whole for their instructional supplies. I think the harder thing to categorize for the teachers themselves are, their classroom libraries that they may have been putting together, right, for years, some of which they, I know when I was in the classroom, I purchased things, I went to garage sales, families would donate, we had great community support. That's a harder number to put, for teachers to put on paper. So that's one of the things they're working on. The first was to make sure all of the instructional supplies are there. Mrs. Antonello was also giving me or the district, a rough idea of the value of classroom libraries so we can start to build their libraries. I think it's going to be a process over time for them to rebuild. I think it's great that the community donations for books, we had a book drive at the end of last summer. Parents that, want to sort of repurpose books that their children are no longer reading. So I do think that it would be great if the board could have a discussion around that, but I think it's sort of a phased project. Get all their instructional supplies in, make sure that they're restored whole there, students have everything they need, have the teachers help put a value on the extent of their classroom libraries of what they've collected or purchased over the years, and then start to build a plan on how we're going to restore those curricular supplies too.
Makes sense, but I just want to make sure that at the end of the day, it's not that we got to wait for the Board of Education to give some kind of approval, because we should just give approval up front and then let the administration and teachers do what they need to do, so they're not inconvenienced any more than, it's already been. So that's my opinion, so that's out there.
I would agree with that, and I'd also say maybe when things are removed, we could have some type of an itemized list, and then maybe we could create like some type of a registry,
I think it also goes above and beyond just the books as well. A lot of teachers have bulletin boards and things, borders, and they laminate it. So they expect it to be around for a long time. So that kind of all adds up too. So also thinking outside, of the books and whatnot, it's, the classroom decor.
Alphabets and
Yeah.
things like that.
Well, the bulletin boards were one of the first items of discussion, and we have a local vendor that provides those materials. That purchase order was issued. Additionally, I think if there's going to be items that are identified that aren't that easily replaced, if you recall, Partner Engineering did discuss testing those actual materials to see if they need to be cleaned, or that they're acceptable, or there's methods that they could be treated. And at that time, we can, depending on what's identified, again, talk to Partner Engineering about maybe the best way to approach those items.
Which, it's all good. I just want to make sure that this board here is not standing in the way of any kind of progress and making sure the teachers have what they
And everyone's on
own.
board
And
with that,
yeah,
correct?
so right? Everybody on board?
Yes.
Yep, that's a big yes. So,
I just, my big thing is make sure our teachers are like compensated for their time, or they're putting a lot of time to get the stuff out of there, hopefully. I don't know,
I
comp
think-
time or whatever's.
I think that would be by contract, right?
By
Mr. Smythe?
contract,
They-
make sure that they can get in there, they have enough time to get in there and out. I'm sure most teachers want to be out of the
Again, they
school
won't
by
be going
3
in
o'clock.
there.
No, yeah,
However, it's within the contract for a room change
right.
for those staff members. So it would be by the collective bargaining agreement,
Okay.
their compensation for
When
change.
are we going to be told? When are we going to know what the expert says? When are we going to find out? Because you can't do any of this other stuff without knowing that.
Well, as it's said, it'll be provided to the Board of Education. For what direction he provides, it'll be.
Oh, I know that. When?
Oh, he's not available the beginning of this week. He was out
Okay,
of the state.
that's
So,
enough.
I mean, as soon as he returns, I would like to say tomorrow, but it's going to be when he returns, we're going to be bringing him back on board. Because I was going to also, as part of the next item, is have him attend the next Finance and Facility Committee meeting. Is it the next one on the agenda? Yeah, but I will wait till we're done with the trailer. So
Yeah.
any reports that's provided, from him, any scope of work, any plan, that would be provided, would be provided on the website as well, but it would be provided to the board as soon as we receive it. Next item is, we discussed at the last meeting about being proactive and doing air testing in the schools, or doing air testing in response to concerns, work orders, or complaints that are submitted. You know, with regard to the proactive stance, or just, you know, the question came up is, do we do any proactive air testing? Do we just do any air testing in general or on a regular basis, which we do not? It would only be, you know, in response and if it was recommended, you know, by our consultant. But we were trying to get numbers with regard to what it would look like if we were to do proactive air testing, where we just did testing in all the schools. But part of that's going to depend on, are we doing all instructional spaces, all classrooms, are we doing office spaces? Because it just gets more and more evolved when you start actually discussing it. I can ask for a proposal from our consultant on a building-by-building basis. He attempted to give some numbers, like if it was a building with 40 classrooms, what that might look like, which would be around a little over $5,000. Again, I'm not. Please don't hold me to that number, because I would want to have a proposal that said this school specifically, but we would have to establish the parameters on what is being tested. Or are we going to take it on a case-by-case basis? Because if you look at it on a building or on a district basis, if you're going to use, 40 classrooms or 40 spaces, and you say that could conceivably be an elementary school, again, depending on how you identify spaces, you'd probably be looking, rough numbers, 50 to 60,000 district-wide. If you take the high school is, at least 3 times the size of an elementary school, the intermediate school being twice the size of an elementary school. But just for discussion, feedback, direction.
Is this something we could go out for a bid or RFP or something of that nature to?
We can go out to bid for anything we want. I refer to our attorney for a second. Partner Engineering is our environmental consultant. We did not go out to bid for their services because it's considered professional or extraordinary services, so there's not a need to do that. However, you could. But typically what happens...
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
One of the things that I've been thinking about with regard to this question immediately in this time is that there are other school districts that have faced this problem. So using, the network of BAs or superintendents, why don't we ask what they're doing? That's one point. The second point is something that came after the meeting the last time with the concerns of the public. And knowing that we have 4 elementary schools, the primary school, the intermediate, and high school, and they all have different birthdays. New technology has taken into consideration a lot of what our concerns are for health and safety. And so they built the systems to make it more easy to regulate, to track, and maintenance departments, have to work with those systems and find different challenges with new systems than they do with old systems. But given the nature of some of the things that I heard, in particular about Central School last time we met, I think, to your point, what do we do, where do we start, that should be some of the guiding factor for us. The age of the building, because the older the systems are, the less compliant they're going to be with the new, likely, not always, because, when you have a steady review by the custodial maintenance and employees, they're looking at those things. But the systems are just not made the same. So I think those should be some of the guiding factors for us, the age and also the maintenance type of things where you see water, there's a problem. And maybe there's no mold and maybe there isn't an issue that isn't fixable or not, it is fixable, but that should be some of our guiding principle.
Excellent points.
Is that also something that the architect might be able to sort of throw on their radar as they're going through the schools and looking at different things?
Well, I think that would already be on the radar as far as, when they're doing the condition assessment. Not so much the environmental, but only if they would be identifying what the cause of an environmental condition would be.
Maybe we can just request for them to have a very keen eye when they're going through, not that they're not going to be, but just a special emphasis on that as they're going through the schools.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do we have any plans in place right now? If mold is found in a room, like next week? Like,
I did ask, I have asked that question, and Mr. Smythe explained to me the process of how, so would you give a background on how you find mold behind a bulletin board, for instance? What are the steps that are taken?
Well, I would almost defer to the designated person in our indoor air quality plan, but like on a, you're gonna have to correct me a lot, Mr. Romano, but if mold is identified, then it's addressed, it's cleaned. And I mean, you start your summer cleaning and you remove a bulletin board, because I think that was one of the items that was reported.
Yes.
And behind the bulletin board, there was mold identified, okay? It was cleaned. It was cleaned with either our fungicide or a bleach solution. It was dried, and then the area was repainted. That's the extent of I know. It wasn't firsthand knowledge, but with regard to the process when, mold is identified, Mr. Romano, what
Well,
happens?
as a public school district, we're required to follow the New Jersey Indoor Air Quality Standard. And what that standard says is that if there's any visual growth, you're to remove it. They don't recommend testing for it, although obviously testing is something that a lot of districts do, and I think is good. But in accordance with the standard, when there's mold, if it's there, you remove it. Now, depends on how many square feet there are. So if you're over a certain amount of square feet, then it falls into a full-scale remediation. So if you're over 100 square feet of mold, now you have a situation where you have to call in, it's recommended you call in a remediation contractor. But if you have a situation where you have 10 square feet or under, then, the requirements, or the recommendations, I should say, from the EPA is to have your in-house staff clean it, remove it with a fungicide or 10% bleach solution, which we do.
When you identify something like that, for instance, kind of going back to talking about the doors, do you, because I'm not a mold expert, so do you kind of do an investigation of the area to see what could potentially cause that? Is there water dripping there, or is it just something that formed naturally?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing you want to do is find the source. Obviously, every situation's different. I'll go to the situation that we're referring to at the intermediate school, where we had some growth on a bulletin board. I think it was on the bulletin board itself, so on the cork board.
Oh.
So that cork board is obviously it's cellulose. It's going to attract any humidity in that space. It's going to that cork board. It usually goes to the ceiling tiles. So every year there's been minor growth on those boards. It's wiped off. Then what we do is we seal it with a antimicrobial, kills primer or something. That's what we did in that situation. But that was in that situation, it's a clear indicator of what's going on. You have high relative humidity in the space. It's causing some growth on the corkboard. Sometimes you get it on the concrete block wall from moisture just emitting through the block. That's natural. That's just, it happens. A lot of times you get it from a roof leak. So if it's a roof leak, I call the contractor. I get the contractor out to fix the leak as soon as possible. Sometimes it's coming from condensate drip from the air conditioning unit. The pipe's got to be wrapped. So to answer your question, yes, the first thing that's looked at is, well, why is this happening? And what are we going to do to remediate that so it doesn't happen again?
Okay, thank you. Anybody, questions? No? Next? Or did you have, I'm sorry.
So would we be looking at it on a case-by-case basis, taking recommendation from our consultant?
You didn't get the report yet from the expert. That's what I keep saying. You can't make these decisions until he tells us what is wrong.
Well, we're not obtaining a report to identify like what is wrong in the schools with regard to,
This is the air testing and what is going on in the trails.
No, well, no, we're talking about doing all the different schools, looking at every space. Do we do air testing in every one? We kind of segued from that. So,
well, the next item on the agenda was being,
Yeah.
being proactive and doing air testing in all of our buildings. So I wanted to make sure that was on the agenda so that we can have discussion. Should we be getting proposal, from our consultant? Should we just have him come to the next meeting so he can provide his, recommendation with regard to that in our schools?
well,
Okay,
Would we be checking with other school systems? Middletown,
We can do that.
We have
especially
to
ones
do
in recent years, to see what they've done. I mean, our consultant probably works for most of them, and he had indicated last week that he doesn't do proactive testing for any of his clients, whether it be school district, hospitals, et cetera. So I can contact, other school district BAs to see if anyone's doing proactive air testing on their own, or try to identify those specifically that have had mold problems in the more recent years, and what did they do moving forward?
Is there any way that we can sort of comb through the work orders that have come in and then identify like water or, mildew or something like that as a term, and then identify, at least to start, those classrooms or rooms or whatever they are?
or maybe just a little bit of a different, I know last meeting, the WTEA mentioned they started a health and safety committee. Maybe we have our committee sit down with their committee and they get feedback from their people in the buildings to see if there's any areas that maybe they felt might be a concern that we could report back and possibly maybe start with those areas. So we can maybe just target certain things that are on people's radar, and then see where we go from there.
And
If
that makes sense, although
Right.
last week we were talking about
well,
everywhere.
no, absolutely. Well, things evolve, and
Absolutely.
you bring up points. So so maybe it'll turn into everything. But why don't we start with the people that are in the buildings and get their feedback and promise that we would have a committee of the board meet with them, and that might be the best course for us to do right now, and then we can build on that and see what direction we should go.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The new Safety and Health Committee, school districts that have that will be addressing school environment and facilities. So if in the BA network or the superintendent's network, there's knowledge of school districts that have that committee, you're going to find that they do have that happen periodically. They do not, as you said, have a standard where everything is measured. I think that's not necessary totally. I think, there was quite an outcry last week. So balancing it, I love the idea of using work orders. That's a perfect suggestion. Using other school districts, but because a school district doesn't do it, does not mean that it's the correct course of action.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Is there a way to get some information on the website for mold, anything that, health and physical effects it might have on somebody?
I mean, would that be appropriate for us to put on our website, or?
Okay.
Why don't we contact the school physician and see if they're comfortable in providing something like that?
All right, thank you.
Or-
Typically, will we refer them to the health department for information?
Well, let's check with the school
Yeah.
physician to see if they're comfortable in doing something like that. Because the problem is, as was pointed out the other.
the microphone, please?
The problem is, as you heard at the last meeting, using the word safe or unhealthy is going to be a very difficult thing to define or say, and that's why I'm not sure how we're actually going to do that, but I certainly suggest contacting the school physician, seeing what their position is with regard to that.
Thank you.
But we'll start immediately as soon as they want to meet with their safety and health, or health and safety? Health and Safety Committee, and get feedback from them. And then we'll look to target different things. Number 9.
High school football field. There's been some discussion on the condition of the football field. Mr. Romano, you want to go through what has occurred, what work was done out there, what work is ongoing?
This past spring, we had a replenishment of the field. We brought some organic topsoil in. We did some leveling. We seeded, we limed, in the hopes that we would get some new growth. Because the sideline was bare on the home side, and then we had some bare spots. However, during the summer, we did get a lot of weeds, a lot of crabgrass. That was mainly also due to the fact that when we seeded in the spring, I pushed off the pre-emergent application. Pre-emergent application is a fertilizer that goes down to prevent weeds from sprouting in the warmer months, but it also keeps seed from germinating. So I pushed that off because I wasn't getting the growth that I anticipated with the spring replenishment. So I think that had some effect on some of the weeds that we have out there right now. The athletic director and I walked out. We took a look at it, and the game plan was on Friday. What we did was we did a slice and seed, and we did a fertilization, a high nitrogen fertilizer to help that seed take. And since I guess it was maybe a week or so ago, it's definitely gotten a little bit thicker with the fertilization. And well, actually, the fertilization was Friday, so I don't want to say it was due to that, but it looks a little better. What we're going to do is after football season in November, we're going to do another slice and seed and aeration, and hopefully that will, result in some better growth with some new grass come springtime.
Just not necessarily about the grass, the water issue over on the sidelines, was that taken care of? I don't remember.
Well, the water issue was significant after, when the bleachers were finished. Some of it was due to some breaks in the sprinkler lines. I think we had 3 breaks, so we had a lot of standing water.
All right, so that wasn't all because of just water runoff then?
I want to say that it
was.
wasn't, no.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that for a fact. I'm not, an engineer, obviously, but I would say the sprinkler, the breaks in the lines that were repaired contributed to it. However, we still do have a good amount of standing water on that sideline. The sideline is completely bare, and it's just, I can't get any grass to grow over there due to that standing water.
So
And topsoil was added there, though.
Yeah, we did add topsoil in the spring. That was part of the project to level it out to see if we can get some runoff, but it didn't work.
Okay, so now that football season's going to begin, we have the cheerleaders that are on the sideline, we have the players. Is there something we can put down for the game so it's just not a muddy mess? And I mean, is there something we can do to make the situation a little better?
Yeah, what we do before every game is we actually pump it out, and we'll squeegee it off, and then we have a tarp that we put down over it that goes over the sideline.
Is it a tarp or like a fabric?
It's actually, it's like a tarp material.
Nothing goes through it. I mean, it's a solid.
Yeah, it's solid. I believe it's solid, Brian. I could be wrong. I mean, to me, it looked like a tarp. I pulled it up the other day. So yeah, I would say it's like a tarp.
So does that stay down all the time, or you take it up after the game?
No, we take it up after the game.
So you're never going to get grass to grow there putting that down anyway.
No,
Yeah. So.
no, it's the only way though to prevent the the mud and everything that's there while the game's on. So.
Okay.
When the meeting was initially, FNF was anticipated to be next Monday, the athletic director, Mr. Radu, was scheduled to attend. It's one of the reasons why it was on the agenda, but he was unable to attend tonight, so I'll look to bring him back next month. But one of his concerns is, the condition of the field, and what a lot of school districts do, in his opinion, is if it's going to be a natural grass field, is to basically strip it from whatever existing vegetation is there, do a regrading, do an aerating, and then you would resod the field, and that's what he's looking to propose for this for our stadium field. I mean, there's
Well, I mean, you know what the thing with resodding is that it kind of burns out, you have to dethatch it, and they always get filled with crabgrass. I mean, it comes down to a regular chemical application process, and if the pre-emergent was added, you know, in the spring, if you didn't do so much seeding, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation now, because we wouldn't have had the crabgrass situation. Because, you know, first of all, to tear all that up and resod that field, that's a lot of money. And looking at our schedule this year, we have 3 home football games, and then the Thanksgiving Day game. So I think Wall kind of got gypped on home games this year, but we have only 3 regular season home games and the Thanksgiving game. So before we run out and spend $1 million on sod, when there's certainly a lot of other things that we can spend money on, I think that plan needs to be reevaluated.
Just one thing that I would mention is that, you know, if we go out and sod things and we still have the water buildup on the sideline, that's not gonna fix anything. We're just gonna be in the same position, you know, a year from now or 2 years from now.
Well, I think the idea of it is, then you would regrade the field at that point in time. You put the crown back onto the field. And again, I'm mentioning this because, you know, Mr. Redu asked that it be placed on the agenda, you know, so I'm just,
But there is a crown on the field. It's just
yes.
over probably a little bit more than you want it.
And,
So-
well, and over time, just, you know, the hardness of the field, there's 2 approaches to it. You can, you know, we can continue to aerate it, we can overseed it and look to get the, you know, the growth back for next year, you know, seed and fertilize for the fall.
Why don't we put a dry well in on that side so all the water runs into it?
You know, like a French
Well,
drain or something like that.
and that
maybe?
side has been intermittent because, you know, it could be a significant rain event, and it's very dry the next day, because that's what was being reported last year. And then other rain events, it's not. So, you know what, we only have the 3 games, but we'll monitor it more. You know, the repairs to the sprinkler system have been made. You know, again, we're not gonna repair this. The sideline was tough to maintain before any work was done on the field anyway, because you have 40, you know, students, football players standing along the sideline. But it's, I just wanted to convey Mr. Redu's sentiments with regard to, you know, the football field, and we can possibly revisit it next month and bring Mr. Redu here. I would ask to do that.
And the water from the bleachers is really not an issue? The water, because originally when we first put them in, that was the conversation back and forth, people, you know, trying to point fingers at the other one.
But again, it's been intermittent and not consistent. And I think, you know, part of it was being blamed on the irrigation system, but that's since been addressed, yet it's not draining to the, you know, to our satisfaction. We've tried to, you know, fill it in a little bit to improve the drainage. But again, that would be part of our facility condition assessment that's currently underway.
So it poured yesterday. Did you guys look at the field today at all and see like how that did it drain or it was wet?
It was wet.
Yeah.
From today.
Andy, put your mic on.
Sorry about that. I have a picture here, and it is the standing water as was stated on the home team side. And as you mentioned, there is a facilities report being done about this. I think that it's incumbent upon the people that are monitoring this to make sure that we're safe for the games that we have, whatever number they are this year, and that the safeguards are in place so that when cheerleaders are being thrown into the air, that there's not a slippage in the mud. Even if it's dry, that would be a possibility and something that we don't want to have any thought to. And then I'd be very pleased to see that in the future we do have some assessment, as you said, and some more consistent approach to maintaining this field, because this is a source of pride for the school district and townspeople, and you have a beautiful bleacher setup there. This field should be reflective of that same setup. So we got a problem now, let's fix it, but going forward, being that we have a natural field and that's what we're staying with, let's make it look the best that it can and that it's safe.
The engineer? Who's going to decide what has to be done? Whether you're going to put sod?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. No one has said the field is not safe.
I'm not saying it's safe.
No, I just
Not
want to.
safe.
Well, we were talking about making sure it's safe, and you said who does that. And I want to make sure that
Oh, no,
one
no.
has
I didn't mean
said
that.
the field is not safe.
No.
The field is safe.
The
What
question
I'm
is,
saying
who's
is,
responsible
who
to fix
makes
it?
the decision for fixing the water? Whether it's going to be sod, whether it's going to be grading.
Well, as part of facility condition assessment, if that's identified as an area in need, which obviously it will be, part of the scope of work moving forward would be how is that addressed? And that would be identified by the architect's engineer, because that's going to be site work.
Everyone good? All right. Number 10.
Student transportation facility. Currently, the update on the airport is, we're somewhat waiting. The township has been in discussions with the owners of the airport. There's been no approval as of yet, so we're still waiting to hear. I just know that they've been in discussions with what Mr. Antaki is proposing to them. So we have no additional information as far as moving forward. With regard to Howell, the work being done by the water company is scheduled to start in January, with the idea that it would be completed prior to the end of the school year, June or July. And I only say that, I bring that up, I reached out to Clayton Block to find the current status. I will not be able to speak with anyone until the end of the week. But based on the discussions of last year, we have till the end of this year where we can remain there at the location on Old Mill Road. But we are now into September, so July is going to be coming around relatively soon. So we need to start, I think, making preparations one way or the other in the very near future. Whether it be obtaining, like if we want the airport, it's a great solution for us. However, if we are going to end up utilizing the agreement with Howell, we need to bring on the architect or engineer to start making preparations for that so we can have them in place for next school year. So, should I be obtaining a proposal from the site engineer, Edwards Engineering, or the architect, or holding out till October? See if anything transpires in the month of September?
Well, I think we need to have better guidance from, and find out what happens with the town and the airport before we start doing anything, right? So, I mean, if that doesn't go through, then we need to proceed with Howell, correct? Okay, so,
Maybe, I was just thinking that maybe us as a board, we can formulate some kind of resolution that we could give to the township, encouraging them to pursue the airport situation, because it's going to benefit the district, certainly benefit the taxpayers in town, because it seems like it's a win-win for us. So that, just an idea I had, that maybe us as a whole board, show our support for having this potential bus compound in town. So I don't,
oh,
what does everybody think?
and it also might be something nice for the board to go out and visit, both of the sites, as there's going to be 3 new board members, so that they can familiarize themselves with the 2 different properties of Howell and everything else.
And
Mr. Chair, are you asking for a resolution?
Well,
A motion
yeah,
to?
well, just talk about it. I mean, because
Yeah.
we've been talking about this, and I understand it's in the township's hands right now, but, you know, for us, there is a little bit of a sense of urgency, because we're gonna have to make a decision either way. I mean, because again, it comes down to, and, you know, several people here weren't on the board, but, you know, my feeling all along is that I wanted us to maintain control of our bus drivers. I don't want us to outsource, because I've heard stories of bus drivers pulling over on the side of the road and just abandoning kids. Our bus drivers know the students. They know who's going to be at a bus stop to pick them up. So I think things like that are very important. We have good employees, and certainly we want to keep them. But with that, you know, again, for 5 years, we've been searching around town for locations. At least 5 years, right? Maybe closer to 6 now, possibly. I feel a long time. And we've looked at well over a dozen different places by just a little background, and nothing has worked out for us. That's why we came to the agreement with Howell, because that was the only thing that was on the table that absolutely worked for us. Nothing else worked. Building a $3.5 million parking lot over in Bailey's Corner Road certainly wasn't the direction that really made sense for us, because it was a country road, even though we owned the land. And then we used that money for better things like air conditioning to benefit the schools. So Howell's certainly still on the table, because it protects the employment of our people, lets us keep our buses, our bus fleet, but the airport honestly would probably be a much better thing for us. So I think maybe if the township doesn't realize how important it is to us, maybe we should maybe send a little note over telling them that.
So maybe Mr. Gross can help us out with this regard to how we might contact them.
Right,
Do
I
we
think-
need a resolution?
Well, here's, the discussion is if the majority of the board wants to take that route to do a formal resolution, we can certainly prepare one for your meeting on the 24th. Certainly have it prepared for the meeting on, but if the board doesn't want to take that route to do a formal resolution, no sense in wasting time and effort on that.
Do we know when September's town liaison is?
I think they had one in August.
They had one.
And
Next one would be October with the
October.
board.
October, so not until October.
I'm definitely in favor of moving towards a resolution for the airport.
and I personally don't have a problem with it. I think, you know, formalizing our stance and what we believe, I think that's important.
I mean, I like the airport. It keeps it in town, which, you know, was a big concern for not only, you know, the folks that are, you know, are driving our buses and taking care of our kids, you know, but also for community folks concerned with, you know, gas usage coming from Howell to here, which, you know, there's pros and cons. Some routes were going to be easier, some routes were going to be a little bit longer, but I think it definitely fits our needs, you know, as a school district much better. So I would hope that if there's a possible solution there, which is two parties that are sort of out of our control a little bit, to, you know, to shake hands and get a resolution, that would be great.
And again, it's a win for the district, and we've made that clear. I mean, the township has a number of other things that they're considering in reviewing this, so, which I can't speak to, but, you know, it's a little bit more complicated
No,
for them.
absolutely, but.
For us, it's yes, we want to park our buses there.
But, I mean, but again, we're the ones staring down a timeline, and, you know.
Absolutely. So that's why I'm bringing it to the board.
Mr. Chair,
July's
Yes.
going to be here.
Mr. Knight, do you believe that it would be undue pressure to have this resolution, or would it be helpful to have a resolution? What's your feel, what's the tone? I mean,
I mean, honestly, I think they realize the importance of it,
Okay.
or the benefit to the district. They do realize that. You know, I've had discussions with them, with the township administrator. It has been discussed by the board at our liaison, that, you know, yes, we're in favor of it. You know,
How often do we have the liaison meeting?
every other month. With the
Every
board
other
members.
month. So we've been
Yeah.
telling them every other month. So now we're gonna hit them with a resolution.
Well, no, I don't think so necessarily, because it only came up, what, at the end of June, July, right? So,
It says here, Mr. Chair, on the committee, this is outdated, but first Tuesday of, it says even every month, 8:30 a.m., that liaison to township committee. That's what's written here on the
So,
website.
every other month is board members, but every month the superintendent and business administrator.
Yeah, it looks like August, this is, I guess, last year, to August, October, December. Would that be the same then this year? That's
It's
that's
every
what's
even
ahead.
month for board members.
right, which is, so the point is that we might not have had a liaison meeting yet. Well, if we had one in August,
Well, there was one in August, but
do we know who went, or?
they're no longer here.
Okay, so maybe, you know, I don't know if maybe, before we do a resolution, I don't know if waiting till October is, you know, so we can have the actual meeting, or maybe have a separate meeting or something like that, or bring them into a special meeting for it.
And again, I don't know that a
Possible.
resolution is necessary because they realize, I think, the district's position on this.
And I think the point is not to necessarily do something that's going to make, that's going to jump in front of what they need to work out, right?
And their approval, or, you know, not approving it, is not a result of the school district going there. It would be the other contingencies on that proposal that we've received. The other aspects of what is being proposed out there.
Which
You know,
again,
which is out of our hands and we're not familiar with, and, you know, from our standpoint, it's just, you know, parking school buses. And if he's able to do something of a broader scope, then we would be able to park our school buses there. But again, it's the broader scope that the municipality has to, you know, deal with and address. But my concern is, you know, we're entering September, and we're gonna have to start planning, whether that be bringing on our consultants in order to, you know, make the proper arrangements so that we can implement, you know, for the following school year, 1920 school year.
So you mentioned that
2021.
they anticipate that project being done by the end of the school year. And if we have to be out of Clayton possibly by the end of the school year, that doesn't leave a lot of time for us to,
No, well, some of the work that we would do could be done at the same time as the water company doing the work on their, where they are. You know, for our purposes of office trailers, utilities, et cetera, that would not be impacted with the work being done by the water company.
but that's stuff that we would probably have to get in place February, March?
Well, prior to July. That's why, you know,
Yeah,
we
so,
need to do
utilities,
design, we need to go to bid, we need to, you know,
yeah, so there's quite a bit of work that has to be done before we even get there, and money's gonna be spent to
Correct.
get to that point. And I don't wanna spend money on something that we might not even go to, so. All right. So we'll hold off on any kind of formal resolution? Okay.
we could also, I mean, maybe if Brian, you could reach out again and see what happens, and if we get some type of other responses, we can figure out what happens between now and the next meeting. So-
I believe they're gonna be, you know, they had their meeting last week. I spoke to Mr. Bertrand. After that, he contacted me and said he was looking to meet with the owners of the airport again this week. But, you know, we're not gonna meet again as an official board till the 24th at the board meeting, and then our committee's not gonna be till October. So if I need to bring things or obtain information from our consultants for our next committee meeting, you know, I need to start moving on that now. Otherwise, it's gonna be November. And then, you know, we know what happens when we hit December, and
Right.
it's July. So, but I'll communicate with Mr. Bertrand again.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 11.
Long-range facility plan, they've been continuing to work on their facility condition assessment. We're setting up a meeting at the end of the month to meet with them and go through their work to date. I think they're looking to put some budget estimates to some of the things they've identified, and perhaps, if they're going to be in a position to do this, is have them attend the committee, the FNF committee meeting in October, and to give an update of where they are. Additionally, we have the demographer who's doing the demographic study. He's been in touch with the township. He's receiving information from the township that he requires to do his study. Building surveys have gone out to the building principals, and they've been returning them to the demographer. We're also looking to schedule a meeting within the next 2 weeks with him to meet and have discussion with the building principals. So hopefully that may come to fruition so that we can have somebody there, have him possibly attend a meeting in October as well. But that may not be till the following month, depending on when he completes his report. I just wanted to provide that update with regard to the status of the long-range facility plan. If there's any questions on that, or?
Anybody have anything else? Maybe for next month, I know we mentioned a couple months ago, the observatory over in Allenwood School. We haven't heard anything about that, and I know, that was the money, the last of the money the Wall Foundation for Educational Excellence donated to us, and it was going along, and now it's been 3 years, maybe? It's been up? No, longer than that.
My understanding, because they were talking about it before I came on the board, so that's I'm trying to gauge a timeline here, was that the building structure was up, but there were components that needed to be put inside that in order for it to work. If I'm not, I could be totally wrong.
If
but
I
think
could
it's-
just add,
Yes.
Mr. Anisio, 2 years ago, the structure was intact. There was an issue with the sliding door off its track, but that was fixed. I think the primary issues that are keeping, and we can have Mr. Lee possibly provide a report, the primary issues are more software, and we've been working with both InfoAge and actually a resident in Wall Township, which we can give you more information on it next month, and we're getting much closer to actually getting that operating now. But I'd like Mr. Lee to come in on that conversation, being that he's been working very closely with the person who's been working on the observatory software and some of the hardware also.
Yeah.
So maybe we can have Mr. Lee attend our meeting next month, because, I mentioned before, this is a very unique thing that's incredible, and the way it was laid out to the board, and the benefits and to the public and everybody else, I look at it every day. I pull out the end of my street, I look straight across, there it is, with deer wandering around it, and to me, I think it's a sin that it's not up and running yet. So
Yeah,
we certainly need to light a match under some feet to move it in the right direction.
Maybe also we can invite the gentleman who's helping out, if he's willing to come too, as
Yeah.
community member, and he can maybe shed some
Right.
better, I am not an astronomer or.
No, but certainly if there's something that this board can do, some resources or
Yeah.
something to move it along to get it up and running, I think we should do that.
Oh, and I think, I think it'd be very interesting for folks either coming to meetings or watching the meetings to know about it, because there's probably a small
Yes.
slice of pizza of, folks that know or are aware of it in the community, so.
Sure. There's also a big curricular benefit to it for students and for teachers. And without getting into a lot of detail that we all need to be brought up to speed, I think the primary holdup for why we're not there yet is because much of the passwords and some of the more confidential information in the setup of that system, both the software and what was connected through hardware, left with the person who was in the district at that time, and we were not able to obtain a lot of that information, which is why we reached out to InfoAge to see if we could sort of deconstruct it back to its beginning, and also working with the company. Just didn't prove as easy as that. So we really had to kind of start with back at ground one. Yeah.
I had a joke, but I'm not going to say it.
Well, I personally want to see it going, because I read a story in the newspaper today about a retired captain, I think, at Fort Dix, reports he shot an alien, they shot an alien in 1978 at a fence there, so I want to look around for little green men, or orange, or purple, whatever they might be.
Well, isn't it also true that they found like the dark matter like at Marconi or something like that? That was also part. That's what I think I know that. It was in New Jersey.
Anybody else on board have anything? No? Okay. At this time, we will open up public comment.
Good evening, Gail Marr, WTA President. Going back to the trailers, I've been in my room probably for about 5 years. And if you asked me what I had in my room to make a list so that the district could make me whole, I would not be able to do it. I'd get a lot of things, but there'd be things I forgot, and those things that I forgot, I paid for. And it's great that the community is getting behind those teachers. But Ally, I believe, has been out there since the trailers were there. That's a lot of stuff. And I don't know how we're going to do it. I mean, my thought is somebody needs to go in and photograph the things they have in the trailer if they can't do it, so that they can put a price on what is theirs. If they're not allowed to go in at all, I would think somebody needs to do that for them. It's always going to be something that they feel they've forgotten, because you don't memorize everything in your room when you leave it in June. So I don't know what it is, but I think a plan has to be in place better than just saying, let's put a price tag on that. Thank you.
Can we, I mean, this is certainly something that, you know, is an important topic, but can we get a plan in place on how we're going to address this, whether we're taking pictures or we'll have a teacher there as people take everything out so they can see everything? But certainly, I mean, we're starting the school year, people have things that they want, things that they need, and this should be one of a very important priority. Let's put it that way.
I was thinking maybe they could FaceTime with somebody who's in there.
Certainly, we have enough technology, we should be able to do something.
You're meeting with the principal tomorrow, so we can review that process with them, get the input from the teachers themselves, and as well as the consultant on how best to retrieve it.
Okay.
I mean, that's a good point, like whether we take photos or FaceTime, or he says, hey, we can
Let them
bring
in?
them in.
Okay,
You know, we'll rely on our consultant.
okay. Which will be probably sometime next week when he's back. Okay.
I was just thinking if you FaceTime the teacher, then that she could say, oh, go in here, go in there. If we just get a bunch of photos, it might not tell the
No,
picture,
absolutely,
so
but
that
you know
way-
what, I think a good point would be to wait until next week when he's back, because he might say it is safe enough for someone to go in there, or there might be no issue. And that would certainly alleviate the guessing game.
And Mr. Romano, do you know when partner engineer will return? Okay. Because if it was tomorrow, then I'd say possibly this week, but I don't exactly know when he's.
Well, this week might be hard, start of school.
Yeah.
So, okay, yes,
Good evening.
good evening.
Christine Opegard, Central School, and I'm the chairperson of the Health and Safety Committee. Just as an update, we have a meeting scheduled for the 17th. We're in the process of getting representatives from every building in the district, not just every school. Our head reps will be handing out a questionnaire to all employees within the next week after their head rep meeting. I don't remember who, I think it might have been you, Mr. Krupa, said, we need to hear back from the teachers as to where the problems are and what they have seen. This is going to be the first step, is for us to then bring that information when we sit down with your committee and say, these are the problems we found in this building, these are the problems we've identified in this building. And then, as we said last week, we can then prioritize, because it's not going to be fixed overnight, and we're aware of that. But there are problems that are worse than others, and we need to put those on a priority. A couple things. So it took me a minute to get school dude. I couldn't understand what you guys were saying, so I didn't know that. Just as an idea, can we direct the custodial supervisors to email the teacher or just forward when they get a response on a work order? If you're not going to give all of us, and I can understand that can be overwhelming. If you're in a room with problems, I mean, I could pretty much put a work order in every week if I wanted to. But that could be overwhelming. And some teachers won't do it. So, I can see pros and cons to both of those. But if you can just have the custodial supervisors forward the response back from Bob saying, this was done, this is what we found, this is what needs to be done, it does give us that somebody's listening to us. Something was wrong in this room, and it was addressed, because a lot of the work is done when I'm not in that room. I mean, it's done at evening hours, early morning hours. So that would be helpful for transparency and just for that communication. And if the teachers can be added, I can see pros and cons to both. I really can. I think it would be good to have teachers added to a point, and I think that that's going to come with building trust. The teachers will be willing to put in those work orders, because you don't want the target, and in the past, you've been the target. So
Nobody's going to be targeted.
I understand that, and I have your word on that, and I believe you.
Believe me.
I do.
No, and it's just not my word. I got 5 other members sitting here that feel exactly the same way. So that, that culture, that idea is dead. That doesn't exist anymore.
And that's a breath of fresh air. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you to everybody. So, Mr. Smythe, you've been talking about, and I want to make sure I got it right, the facility condition assessment and the facility project report, which now I understand are part of the long-range facility plan. Is that correct?
Mr. Smythe?
I'm sorry, Mr. Agnizio.
Yes.
Can I ask Mr. Smythe that question?
Mr.
Mr. Agnizio, can you get that answer for me?
Do you have that answer?
Facility condition assessment is part of the process of developing the long-range facility plan.
So you're, Mr. Agnizio, you're in the process of completing a long-range facility plan right now?
Correct.
Correct.
They're doing walkthroughs of all the buildings.
Who is they?
Our engineer, I'm sorry, and
Okay, do you have
an architect.
the name of the engineering company?
It's the architect, it's Spiesel Architectural Group,
Okay,
Spiezle.
They were approved several meetings ago.
that's fine. And when is the deadline for that long-range facility plan? Because obviously we want to look at it together.
We don't necessarily have a timeline on it. They're going through all the buildings. They have a process. They were, and correct me if I'm misspeaking, they were going to meet with the administration in the buildings. They were doing walkthroughs, doing their notes, having follow-up meetings with Mr. Smythe, Mr. Romano. So it's whenever they complete it. And the most important thing for us is to make sure it's completed correctly and that they have all the information needed, because what they find is how we're going to proceed going forward, whether we're going to look at referendums or use budgetary money to fix different things. So we want to make sure it's done right. That's the most important
We're
thing.
currently scheduling a meeting the last week in September to review the status of where they are. So, we're not receiving the report this month or possibly even next month. I would say at the earliest it would be November.
Okay, and Mr. Agnizio, a reference was made to the facility project report. Is that the same thing, or is that something different?
Facility project report is what Mr. Romano updates us every month on different things going on, such as the paving, and
So that was Mr. Romano's report that I heard him say that this was happening at this building?
yes.
Perfect.
Like the paving at Old Mill School, the back part won't
Gotcha.
be done until October.
Okay.
And that's a report we get every month.
Thank you. Just as a point of correction, and it's really minor, I think, but on the change of use orders for Central School, the speech room that's now a resource room and the supervisor's office, it's listed as carpeted. Neither of those rooms are carpeted, they're tiled. So that's, I just mentioned, I just noticed when I was flipping through it.
Mr. Romano, is it going to be carpeted, or is that just
I hope
a
not.
mistake?
Please don't carpet anything ever again.
Okay.
Okay, and now I want to go to one more thing. We were talking about you were talking about air quality testing throughout the district. And it isn't really feasible to do the whole district. I think it's going to cost you a whole lot of money to do. But can you please be proactive and do air quality testing in any room that has had a water leak? Whether it be from a roof, whether it be from condensation, whether it be from some mystery. If there was mold present under any circumstance, on a bulletin board, on a chair, on a brick wall, can we test that in the condition that it's in, not after opening windows, and be proactive in that? And someone over here said, and again, I'm apologizing for not knowing names. Somebody said, you know, let's not really care about what other districts are doing. Can we be the leader in that and say, no, we're going to say there was a water present in this room. We all know, I'm not a scientist. I'm a special ed teacher, but I know mold grows in water, and it needs to have some kind of food source. I know that from basic science. So can we be proactive in that and be ahead of the curve for a change in that, and not worry about what other districts are doing? Do what's right for our kids and what's right for our building. And I appreciate those of you that brought that up, because I think that's so important. The head custodians, the principals, and the teachers know what rooms have had ceiling tiles changed in them over and over and over and over again. They know. The teachers know. We know where the hallway leaks are. We know where Niagara Falls happens when we have a northeast storm or heavy snow. So it's not a big secret. Those rooms need to be tested. And rooms such as we have in Central School, we have rooms that have no windows to open. We have several of those spaces. I know there's air conditioning units that sometimes are working in those spaces, but that's not good. They should be priority to be tested. And rooms that have had ongoing leakage should be priority in every single building, not just Central School. And again, I applaud you for being proactive. Mr. Addonizio, as soon as we have our meeting, I'll be reaching out to you so that we can figure out what works best for your committee and our committee to meet together as a committee that have the same goal in mind. And I appreciate your work that you're doing.
Thank you. Mr. Romano, just something that you brought up. Rooms with no windows, in general in the district, do you find that those spaces have more problems, less problems, or is it just, it doesn't really matter?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say, I could say with accuracy that,
Right.
you know, a room with no windows have more or less problems. Yeah, I wouldn't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Betsy Cross, I live in Wall. Just wanted to ask one question about the Howell contract for busing. Are we able to get out of that contract, or are they going to require the two-year cancellation provision?
We haven't discussed that yet. We haven't discussed that because we're still in a state of limbo. We don't know if we can go to the airport or if that'll be off the table, and we have to have a backup plan.
All right, I think you definitely need to discuss it. We don't want to be parking at the airport and paying 2 years for a contract in Howell. So please put that on your to-do list, because we can't afford to pay off a 2-year contract. All right, I want to get over to the Central School trailers. I emailed today because none of the documents were up online for the agenda. Can the board let me know when they received this timeline from Mr. Smythe? Did you get it when you walked in the door tonight, or did you get it before?
About 5 o'clock.
5
I got an email.
o'clock. All right, if you got it at 5 o'clock, you should have put it up online at 5 o'clock, because I shouldn't have to walk in here and now have a copy of the timeline. The timeline doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, Mr. Smythe, I'm hoping you can answer some questions, because your name is on this. It says, I guess you created it September of 2019. Just wondering when you started working on it. I did ask for the timeline about 2 weeks ago. Could you go over, you mentioned that the trailers cost $339,000. Could you go over how much it actually cost in total with electric, plumbing, things like that, because you budgeted 625,000, and you're only showing the 339. Do you recall how much you spent on those trailers?
Not the total cost, no. I took the information from, I believe, bids that were received at the time from 2007. There was a bid summary by the architect, and the item was $339,000. I anticipated that to be inclusive of all the work being done to install the trailers, so.
Well, I did go over to the township today and get the files. It looks like when the person that you got the trailers from, their name was Mobile Lease Modular, he wrote down that the trailers cost $65,000. So I'm wondering, why would you say the bids were $339,000? You also show, I have a copy of it, that new trailers were $397,000. So, Mr. Adonisio, I'm going to request that you go back and do some type of investigation, because it seems like the money is not matching up. And I also cannot find the payment, and I have a disk that has all the transactions on it, and I cannot find this transaction. So I'm extremely concerned.
And what is that document you have?
I have the minutes from May 17, 2007, the special meeting, and...
Of the Board of Education?
Yeah, Mr. Smythe signed it.
And what was the thing you got from the township?
I went over and got the building use file and the permit file, so I have those documents. So what was submitted said the trailers cost $65,000, and that sounds more in line with what they should cost. I mean, there's no way those trailers cost $339,000 for used 1999 trailers, so something's not right, and I can't find the transaction. So I'd like Mr. Smythe to find that transaction. What I can't understand is, in his timeline, I'm not sure why the board doesn't have questions on this timeline, because it really doesn't make a lot of sense. How did Rico Proposal give you a proposal on June 7th? When did you actually ask for bids? Could you go over how did they drive by and just say, wow, those trailers look terrible, let me give you a bid for $65,000? How did they come up and just give you a bid? I mean, not a bid, they gave you a quote, and it should have been a bid, not a quote. Mr. Smythe, Mr. Romano,
Ms.
Mr.
Cross.
Adonisio, can they answer that question? I think it's very important we know how you got
So,
these
Mr. Romano,
quotes.
can you go through again how we go out for contractors?
Well, obviously, if it's $6,000 or over our quote threshold, I get multiple quotes. In this situation, it was for budgetary purposes. So you have a contractor go out, look at it.
Did they
tell
go
me how
look
much
at
it
it?
is.
Did this contractor go on June
Ms. Cross,
7th?
let him
I know,
finish.
but did the contractor
Well,
go
well,
out and look
he's
at it?
explaining it. We'll get to that.
I know, let's be very specific. I don't want to talk about vague things. I want to
Well,
talk about the
he's answering-
central
no,
school
He's answering your
trailers.
question, how we get a contractor to go out there and what the process is.
I want to know about the specific contractor for the central school trailers. I don't want anything generic. I want to know, did this contractor go visit the trailers on June 7th, Rich Coco, and who did he go with?
Mr. Romano, do you know that answer?
Yeah, Rich Coco went and visited the trailers. He went by himself, and he did an assessment of them, and then gave me a quote and told me the work that he felt needed to be done.
And why did he go by himself? Did he log in and say he was at Central School and sign the log? Or did he just walk around the back of the building?
No, he checked in, or either checked in, or I called the custodial supervisor to let the building know that he was going to be there. I don't recall it. Yeah, that's going back a little while ago.
Mr. Romano, did he go inside the trailers and look too? Or was it just an outside?
He just did an outside assessment,
Okay.
yes. He didn't go in, though.
So, but what I don't understand is, how did he just show up at the Central School trailers? Like,
He
we were
drove his
supposed,
car, and he parked in the parking lot,
He was asked to.
Well, he was asked to
and
go.
was asked by me to go.
But why didn't you use, you said you were going through a co-op vendor, why didn't you go through the co-op vendor and they would have gotten the bids?
At that time, I did not know what vendor I was using, so I did not go through a co-op vendor.
Yeah, but you told it in your F&F minutes, you said you're going through a co-op vendor. I called the co-op vendor and he said you did not go through the co-op vendor.
Well, the
So-
co-op vendor's listed at a later F&F meeting. That was the
No,
vendor,
the
that
co-op
was Risk
vendor's-
Construction.
Mr. Romano, so when we first started talking about these, to get a feel, was this contractor reached out to get a feel for what kind of pricing we would be looking at? Or was this more of like, if it was the right price, this would have been somebody possibly would have went with? Or was it
This
more just a
was-
fishing expedition?
Yeah, well, this was the contractor that did the West Belmar front porch renovation.
Okay.
So I had history with him. He did a
And-
great job, West Belmar.
Yep.
Asked him to, told him we had a potential project, not sure what needed to be done. If he could take a ride over to Central School, take a look at it for me, and give me his feedback. And he did that in the form of a quote.
But
Okay.
that's what we're not supposed to be doing. We're supposed to go out for formal
No,
bids.
Ms. Cross, that's not true.
Yeah,
we-
if it's over 40,000, you're supposed to go out for a formal bid
But we
through
didn't.
your co-op vendor.
But hold on, we didn't
Wait,
know
wait,
how
wait.
much. We didn't know how much it was going to be. That's the point of this.
Well, that's why you go through the co-op vendor, because all those
But-
people have
but
already been
we don't have to
checked
go,
out.
We don't have to go through the co-op vendor.
So why did he say he went through the co-op vendor when he didn't?
But we did later on. That's the contractor that was
didn't.
initially hired.
You
Cor-
didn't
Mr.
go through
Romano,
the co-op vendor
the-
at all.
Mr. Romano, the contractor that was hired, that was there and then no longer there, that was a co-op vendor?
Yeah, Risk Construction was a co-op vendor.
Okay, so the
But you
person that
didn't
did
go
the
through the
West
co-op.
West Belmar work went out more or less as a courtesy to give you an idea of what
We
was
don't
going
need
on.
people to go out and do courtesies.
So
We need to do
considering-
proper bids.
But
Considering
we do, because that's how you find out, you get a baseline for what you're looking at. You can't just assume something is $40,000 or something's $100,000. You need to start someplace. So you have someone go out
And you
and look
go
at
out for a formal bid, and you open them up in public so people
No.
see them. You don't
So
say,
what I'll
hi, this is
say
a friend of
is
mine, I know you did West Belmar, can
Considering
you
the
come in?
price, considering that $60,000 number, it was determined,
65.
obviously that's above our bid thresholds, that we would need to look at the co-op to get this job completed. And
Correct.
that's what we did.
So what was discussed leading up to this point for the trailers was that there was rot in the T111. We were going to take the
When did you
T111
discuss that,
down.
Ralph?
Previous meetings.
Yeah, what meeting?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
It should be in this timeline. This
Ms. Cross-
timeline is very important, and this timeline is missing a lot of
No,
important
Ms. Cross-
information.
Do you
And-
understand that the board has taken action that no students are going to be in here, okay?
That doesn't matter right now. What
Well,
matters
it
is we
does
almost
matter.
got, what matters is we almost re-sided it, put in some new windows, and had kids in there, and could have had harmful effects for the rest of their life. So now I'm trying to get to the bottom of, why did this happen? Because it shouldn't have happened. And I don't know, they didn't
But
even
it
go in the
didn't
trailer.
happen.
And they
It
didn't
didn't
even
happen.
go in the trailer. Did they go underneath the trailer?
But Ms. Cross,
Right,
do you
well-
do you understand? Do you understand how this works?
I understand perfectly
No,
how this works.
You're missing something, because
I'm not
what we
missing
all
anything.
what we all thought going into it was the T111 needed to be replaced because there was rot. So
That's what you thought?
That's what everybody thought. We don't. None of us have X-ray vision. You don't have X-ray vision. So I can't walk up to a place and say there's bugs in that wall or there's rot in that wall or anything of that nature. So there was no way any of us could have known. So what we did find out was that a contractor did go out. A contractor
He didn't
refused-
even go
a
in the
contractor
trailers.
No.
But we don't
But
even know why.
What we do know is a contractor went out. A contractor refused to do work because he said, as we learned at the last meeting, they should be scrapped after it was opened up.
And it was
that's-
a
and that's what we
non-co-op
found out.
vendor. How did you find HTHI? How did they come into play?
That's the co-op vendor, correct?
No,
No.
HTHI was after the co-op vendor.
Oh, okay,
left.
okay.
So how did you find HTHI? The non-co-op vendor, and you wrote down it was a co-op vendor.
Mr. Romano, do you know how
Well,
we,
I got additional quotes after the
it was,
co-op vendor whose wrist left.
and how many quotes did we get for that?
I think they're all attached to the,
Was Bravo Construction part of the co-op?
Bravo was not, no.
No.
He did not quote.
How about George Cruntis Painting and Construction? Were they part of the co-op?
No.
No.
No. So why are we going to all these people that are not in the co-op, and you're telling us and putting it in writing it was in the co-op? I'm going to show you a few pictures, and it was pretty evident to a bunch of other people about what the problems were.
Just so clear, though, that's an inaccurate statement, that these contractors were presented as though they were co-op vendors. Okay? 'Cause they
I'm reading
weren't.
your July 1st FNF minutes, and I'm reading your August 5th FNF minutes. And both of them, you say co-op vendor. And
Yes.
how did you get in here saying 38,000 when nothing in here shows 38,000? Why would you write in your FNF minutes 38,000 when nobody's bid was 38,000? That doesn't even make any sense.
Because that's what was discussed at the meeting.
What?
Do
You're
you
just
understand
gonna
the way-
spend what you want to spend and not do and fix what you should have properly fixed?
Well, again, and I'm going to go back. None of us have x-ray vision. So when we're sitting in a meeting, I don't know what's behind a wall. I'm only writing down and taking notes on what is discussed. And at that point, to my knowledge, Mr. Romano didn't open up any walls, didn't know what was inside.
Well, that's why we hire the professionals. Here's a couple.
and that's what we
here's a
tried to
couple
do, but that's what
pictures.
you're
I'll show you
questioning.
the pictures. This shows that there was water running underneath. I don't know if it was sewage.
Can't see that. I don't-
Here is
The light is not.
picture. Hopefully they can see it on there. Here's a picture, so maybe you can describe what that is. This is a picture underneath the building.
Looks like a sewer line. But I don't understand what that,
That's why we hire professionals. That's what they're supposed to be doing.
when was that picture taken?
It was taken underneath the building.
When?
I don't have the date.
Who took it?
Who cares who took it? Somebody took it underneath the building. It says the sanitary pipe, is that standing water or is the pipe leaking raw sewage under the trailer?
Or was it after a rainstorm?
There's one picture. This one here is the cement blocks.
When was that picture taken?
The same day as the other picture.
When was that?
Before you shut it down. Okay? There's no mortar between the blocks, and what are these blocks resting on? Should be poured concrete footing below the frost line. Random shapes on all blocks, hard to tell if they're placed right side up, giving structural support.
And we were told at the last meeting that they are on poured concrete footings.
I mean, they're not even, some of them aren't even touching. Here is the pesticide application. Where was this placed?
On the entrances.
On the entrances?
Yeah.
There's actually even a bug on the picture of your own pesticide application. Pesticide application, it says trailers, exterior and exterior.
Can you use the microphone?
Infestation.
So,
It says ant infestation, trailers, exterior and interior.
I'm glad you have that. It shows I was actually complying with the IPM law, so.
I know. The problem is Ms. Dyer didn't tell the parents in her letter about what was being done. Here's another picture.
all right, Ms. Cross, we're aware of the condition of the trailers. That's why all work is stopped.
I'm not finished.
Well,
Here's another picture that a concerned parent took in the district, okay?
I've
This
probably
looks
seen
like-
every picture that concerned parents have taken.
All right, do you know
and
what this is then?
It looks like a black blob from here, to be honest. Can't tell.
It looks like rodents have eaten and taken the insulation away. That's what that looks like.
Can't see it.
This is another picture. You got garbage underneath the trailer. There's like tires, so I guess it's cheaper to just dump them under the Central Screw trailer and go to the dump.
No, that's actually we found out about that. That is actually the wheels that transported them to that place.
So they've been there for 12 years. You had the tire under there. There's some problems that might look like with the wiring. If this is the electrical conduit and wire job, you should look into it with the town code officer. Some of the wiring does not look
Right.
like it should. this is all underneath the trailer, that they were just going to fix. Somebody didn't even come in, we didn't go out for bids, we told we're in the co-op, and they're not.
Ms. Cross, do you have any questions this evening? Because we'd love to hear the questions. Because the pictures are blurry to us from
Here's
sitting
another
here. All
one.
right, Ms. Cross, please
Another
direct it towards
picture.
the board.
Another picture. The problem is somebody needs to be held accountable. You were just looking to fix the problem, get it in at your price, close it up, have mold in there, get the kids in there at the start of school. Everything that's been said these last 2 weeks have been, one lie after the next about what we did. We went to a co-op vendor. We're hearing you never went to a co-op vendor. I actually called the co-op vendor, and he said, no, they never submitted anything. That's the whole purpose of the co-op vendor, so that you're following your own procedures. Mr. Smythe has an entire manual he's supposed to follow. For somebody that's being paid the amount of money, his $250,000 compensation package, this is not what we should be getting. He should be put on paid leave. The purchase until yesterday should be investigated. None of these documents with the bids are even date stamped. I don't know when they came in. He actually has in his own timeline that the one quote from RIS is dated a different day than he even attached. He has it dated 6/14, and in his timeline he has July July 18th. So he's got his own timeline wrong. So there's no date stamps on any of these, and I even immediate accents them. Mr. Smythe said he had 9 open Oprahs. He only shows 2 in his log, because all of mine are just not even in there. So everything I've asked for, he has not given back. Who else knew the HTHI Construction? Anybody else on the committee know who they were? Or does Mr. Romano just go out to who he feels like getting quotes from?
It's his job to go out and get quotes.
No, it's not. His job is to get bids. Anything over 40,000, he's supposed to go out for a public bid.
The quote was under 40,000.
It was 65. Your first bid came in at $65,000, Ralph. You need to read your own material. 65,000. For that purchase order preview, how do you have that dated July 26? I never got an answer on that.
Ms. Cross, August 6, 2019, obtained quote from HTHI in the amount of $33,550.
I know, but you're.
Okay. So
when
you said
did
it
you
was
find out? No, your first bid
No.
came out at $65,000. Look at your timeline.
Right. I see that on June 7th.
Right. So
okay?
what? You weren't going to fix it right? You just wanted to spend 38?
Well, then June 14th, there was one for $21,840. And then our meeting, it was $38,000.
Right, but you need to put in here how these people came to be giving these bids. You should be saying, we did
well-
not go out for a proper bid. They were not co-op vendors. This was
They're
not
not
handled
bids.
properly. I know they're not bids. They're supposed to be bids, Ralph. That is the point. Can you go over in the August 18th Friday agenda, Mr. Smythe attached the renewal application for the temporary trailers.
And we did away with that at the board meeting. We did not pursue that.
And what he put in the application.
Doesn't matter.
No, it does matter.
No, it doesn't matter, Ms. Cross.
It
because
does matter,
no
Ralph.
students are going in there.
Ralph,
when we
it
found out
does
about the
matter,
when we found out about the
because
problem,
this person is in
we
charge
took
of
action on the
$77
problem.
million in children in schools, and he put
$70
down
million.
$77 million is our budget, Ralph. Can you tell me, does Mr. Richens come and visit the property every year?
That was discussed last meeting, and the answer was no. Some years they come out and do inspections. Some years they don't.
Okay, well, they're supposed to come out every year, and I'm going to give you a copy of the application that he was supposed to sign.
Mr. Smythe.
Brian was supposed to sign it, Cheryl was supposed to sign it, and Lester Richmond was supposed to do a walkthrough. If they had done that, you wouldn't have people in those trailers. But since you didn't do it, that's why we got this far. The trailers were only supposed to be used for 2 years and then 3 years for renewal. So as of July 2013, you weren't supposed to be using the trailers anymore. You had to go through a whole process, which you never did.
No, we do.
You
That's
just
what was
said
on-
that Mr. Richens wasn't visiting the trailers.
That's what we found out at last meeting.
Right.
But.
And you were subjecting the kids to those trailers in those conditions, and they should not have been in there. Mr. Smythe was not following his own procedures, and neither was Miss Dyer, and maybe that's why she's not here tonight.
With regard to the renewal for temporary classroom space, the decision by the county executive superintendent or his designee to visit, not visit, that's their determination. However, we received the approvals from the county executive superintendent to utilize those spaces each year.
When I look at the original application, you have mistakes in your original application. So that's why the whole investigation needs to start at the original investigation. I printed off your website, your bids and quotes for 2018-19 and 19-20. There's nothing in here for the trailers. So why is that? There's no summary sheet for the trailers now. That's called a bid quote summary sheet. So we would never know what the bids and quotes were. That's why I always ask, when you have these finance and facilities meetings, you're supposed to attach what you're looking at. So I don't know why, it's very suspicious that you don't have them for this. And when you look at all the problems, how do we trust you handling anything here? I mean, nothing has come back from Mr. Smythe that I've asked for the last 2 weeks. So I don't know when these items were created. I have no idea, because there's no date there's no date stamps, there's no time stamps, there's no fax sheets, nothing. RIS and HTHI are not listed on the state contract vendor list. So we go through this every year, and you list your approved state vendors. You just don't get to pick and choose who you want to go to, because you're a public agency. You have to pick people through your co-op or on your state-approved vendor list. That's not happening. This is what Mr. Smythe posted on his agenda with the renewal application. He said he was doing exterior renovations, siding, and windows. When he knew he wasn't doing that, when he knew that there was so much more damage and he was hiding it on the renewal application. Then on Tuesday, after the Board of Health comes in, he changes it, but I saved it online. Somebody needs to be held accountable for all the shenanigans that are going on with these Central School trailers, because it's pretty much everything else that's, how do we trust you with other issues? So then he changes it on the Tuesday, and he calls it exterior renovations, siding and windows. So after 4 o'clock, he then changes it, and he does his transfer for $30,000. And now he calls it framing, repairs, and siding. So that's all hidden from the board, it's hidden from the public. So, Mr. Smythe, who changed this? Who changed that?
Mr. Smythe, do you know what this renewal application is? And
It's a renewal application that was on the agenda for the board meeting, because after work by the contractor started on Friday, we scheduled the engineer and architect to come out on Monday based on their observations and the scope of work that they were preparing for us. We revised the application to not only be siding, was to be siding and include structural repairs. So nothing was being hidden. It was when the information was available, when the engineer was,
When did you know there was structural damage, Mr. Smythe? The exact date and time. This has been asked about 5 times now. The exact date and time you knew there was structural damage.
Mr. Romano, do you know that answer?
Can you ask me that question again?
When was the
again, with
exact
regard to
date
the
and time?
clarification, the
I don't want
engineer and
clarification,
the
I just want the
architect
date and
were brought
time.
in to make that determination. not us.
Right, so what date was that? Do we,
We contacted them on Friday when they start,
Okay.
when HTHI started the work, expanding, removing of the exterior siding.
So what was the date and time you knew there was structural damage?
When the structural engineer said there was on
And when
Monday.
was that?
It was
It's
on
not
that
in your
It was on that
timeline.
Monday.
It's not in your timeline. What was the exact date and
Ms. Cross,
time?
the timeline,
August 19th, architect engineer on site to view framing after siding is removed by contractor to prepare details to make repairs.
So, but you didn't write in there, that was the first time you were advised of the structural damage? Wasn't the RIS, didn't they tell you that they weren't gonna fix it because they should have been scrapped? How come that's not in your timeline, Mr. Smythe?
Ms. Cross, please direct towards the chair.
Mr. Adonisio, why is that not in Mr. Smythe's timeline? All
Because-
these issues?
Because I guess he didn't put everything that you want in there. The board fully understands the situation, fully understands
I
it.
don't think you do.
Well, we do. I'm sorry to disagree with you, but we do. That's why there's never going to be students in those trailers, and we're going to decide what we're going to do with them once we get the information that we're looking for.
Can you go over, Mr. Romano, on on August 5th, what you told the board about the trailers?
Ms. Cross, direct questions to the chair.
Oh, Mr.
and-
Adonisio, can you let me know I'd like Mr. Romano to tell us what he told the board about why we were changing vendors.
Changing what vendors?
You had RIS, they walked off the job.
Ms. Cross, this was
No,
already
I
discussed
want
at
Mr.
last meeting.
No, it wasn't.
It was on the news.
No, I want Mr. Romano to answer what he told the F&F committee that night on August 5th.
I don't even understand your question.
I think
Our
he- I
meeting at
think he
August
does.
5th, it was that work was going to be done by a co-op vendor and be completed before the start of school. That's what's in the minutes, and that's what was said.
I'd like Mr. Romano to answer the question. What did he tell the board? Did he tell the board that the first vendor
It
had
wasn't the
walked
board,
off?
it was the committee.
I
If
know.
we're talking
Did
about
he
the
tell the
F&F committee,
committee?
that's what it was.
I know. Why can't Mr. Romano answer what he told the committee?
Because it's not a cross-examination. You asked a question, you have the answer.
You
You have the
didn't-
answer
no,
in
no,
writing.
he didn't answer
You
it.
have the answer in writing. You've brought up that
don't have
one
the answer in
sentence
writing.
more times than I can count. And I've told you, that's all that
So
was
why
discussed.
didn't we have a change order? Like a change order like for the air conditioning? So if you switched vendors, why didn't you do a change order? Why did you lie and say on August 5th it was
Well,
going to
first
be a
of all-
co-op vendor?
first of all-
and then on August 6th
First of all,
you got a
we did not
non-co-op
lie.
vendor.
We, the members here, did not lie.
Who lied then?
Possibly nobody.
Look at your own minutes, Ralph. You typed them up.
I did type them up.
Right.
And that was the information that was provided at the time.
You don't think that's a problem?
There-
I want to hear what exactly
Ms.
what Mr.
Cross.
Romano told the F&F committee on August 5th.
I told you what he told you.
No,
So that-
no. I don't want
yes.
you to tell me. I want him to tell me what he told.
It's not.
What are you
pick and
hiding,
choose what you
Ralph?
want.
Why can't he say
Ms. Cross,
it?
first of all, I am not hiding anything.
All right, so
okay,
then
and
let
that's
him
the
answer.
second meeting in a row you've made a comment
So
like that.
let him answer
so
the question.
I will not be accused of hiding anything because I'm a volunteer along with everybody else here, and we have nothing to hide. All right. The whole purpose of this now is to be as transparent as possible on every matter affecting the school district. That's why you've had more time speaking here in one evening than you have between the Township of Wall and the Board of Education and probably all your years coming. So a little
And-
respect and not accusing people of things that are simply not true would be appreciated.
Can you answer, do you have the tapes that I requested last Wednesday to show when vendors, staff went in and out of the buildings? I did send in an Oprah for that.
And I responded to you about that.
No, and you
Or-
asked
No, I
Mr. Smythe,
responded
and
to
he
Mr.
didn't
Smythe,
reply.
and you said you were not requesting the tapes. You just
I
wanted
said
to
I
make
want
sure
to
they
be
were
sure the
not
district
destroyed.
has them. Does the district have the tapes 30 days back from last Wednesday? That's the question.
I don't think they're tapes. It's digital, correct, Mr. Smythe?
It would be digital. I don't know the extent that the storage capacity is for the cameras, but that information was provided to Mr. Lee as far as making a copy of whatever data was recovered.
Okay, so-
I don't know if it's 30 days, 40 days.
Okay, so even though it wasn't a formal Oprah request, you took the steps to make sure that that footage was saved?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, but he didn't reply, so it'd be hard to tell.
But replied now, so we have the answer.
Mr. Smythe told the Asbury Park Press he had bills totaling $33,000. When I went in to get them, he didn't have them, and I still haven't gotten them. Can you go over what bills you have spent $33,000 on for the trailers?
I didn't see anything in the press.
I've never spoken to the Asbury Park Press.
Yeah, I was
Oh,
gonna say, I
that was
didn't
in
see
the
that.
article. So you should have wrote that back. That was in the article.
To clarify, you requested the bills totaling $33,000. I provided you the invoices I had to date. I told you it was all the invoices I had. You refused to take it.
No, I refused to take it because you didn't have a cover sheet on it saying you were answering any type of question whatsoever. That's not how it works. There's an Oprah, that's why you have the Oprah log.
All right,
So
Ms.
you
Cross?
send it back via email.
Ms. Cross, do you have any other questions that we can answer this evening? Because you are now at 32 minutes, and we are being as accommodating as possible, but I know there's some people behind you that would like to speak, and essentially we are beating up a dead horse at this point.
It's not a dead horse. That's what the company you bought the trailers from submitted. It said the whole purchase price was going to be $170,000.
I
If
thought you
were
just
gonna
said it
pay-
was 65,000 before.
It was 65 for the trailers, 52,000, you had electrical and plumbing. So that's the total 170, but Mr. Smythe has in his minutes that the trailer was 339,000. So I'm wondering where the other $400,000 went. So I'd like the board to research that.
Yeah, I don't,
Here's the minutes.
I, doesn't,
But you budgeted 625,000. Why did you budget 625,000? I see you paid a consultant $40,000, it says. I'll give you a copy of that. That's an awful lot to consult to buy 2 trailers.
well,
That's why the whole purchase should be investigated.
yeah, Ms. Cross, I mean, you're talking about stuff from 2007.
Yep,
None of us were here.
it doesn't
Cer-
matter.
No, it does matter. So there's no way we can give you the answers you're looking for by handing us papers, one with 170,000, then board minutes with
You'll get it in
397,000.
an email. It says professional services, temporary classroom units at Central School, $40,000. Who are we paying $40,000 to for professional services? The architect to buy 2 trailers, 40 grand? The
Don't
money
know.
was like Monopoly back then. It was Mr. Habel and Mr. Smythe.
And
Mr.
Mr.
Carhart-
Hable is not here anymore.
Right, but
Okay.
Mr. Smythe still is, and his name is over all of these documents.
Well, it makes
So
sense
he'll-
because
he'll
he is the
can
business
remember.
administrator.
Right, so he should be able to remember. I can't find the transaction of when they paid for
Ms.
the
Cross,
trailers.
you cannot seriously think he's going to remember something from 2007.
He knew what he paid, he told us what he paid, he must have looked it up somewhere. Professional services, can you ask Mr. Smythe what that is?
Profe-
$40,000. It's a lot of money for professional service, to buy 2 trailers, 40 grand?
Do you any idea if you recall what 40,000 could be?
Back in 2007?
Yeah.
Take a shot.
And if you don't know, that's fine.
Professional
because-
services, temporary classroom units at Central. Well, as was discussed earlier, we should not be doing these things ourselves. We should be hiring professionals to go out to bid. So they were the consultants, they were the architect of record that prepared the plans and specifications that
Yeah.
contractors bid on, submitted to the Department of Education for approval, and that was their fee. That was,
$40,000 to buy 2 trailers sounds outrageous.
And
That's
Ms.
why
Cross,
the money
sitting-
was
you-
like Monopoly
All right,
and
sitting
why
here now,
Habel is not here.
It does, and that's why, every year for my...
$40,000, Ralph, you don't think that was a lot of money?
I
We're
just-
we're having
Ms. Cross, I
parents
just agreed
contribute
with you.
books now.
I just agreed with you.
just as a clarification, if the estimate was in the 600,000 and bids came in at 339 for reconditioned trailers or over 400 for new trailers, you're talking about a fee that's about 10%, which is customary fees
To
for
buy 2
professional
used
services.
trailers,
For
$40,000
preparing plans
is
and
Cross.
specifications,
outrageous.
Bid documents and submitting to the Department of Education for approval.
I have the bid
Well,
documents.
Ms.
It
Cross,
didn't take a lot of
one
work.
thing-
It was about 6 pages.
One thing we have learned here is that nothing comes cheap, unfortunately. Everything's got a price to it, and certainly I think things are priced very high with many things we have done, but that's just the way it is, and there's no way around it. And unfortunately, this is probably one of those things. So you're now at 37 minutes. I'm asking you to please wrap it up.
I'm going to say again, we need an investigation from the beginning of purchasing the trailers all the way through today, because nothing is making sense. The timeline doesn't make any sense. We're running a school district, not a family business. You have to go out for professional bids. You can't just pick and choose who you want to go to and say, I'd like my number to come in around here, and then if it doesn't, okay, I'm going to go to somebody else. And you were putting the staff and the students at risk. It could affect them the rest of their lives.
But
And we
it's
have
not
a couple
now because we
people-
took action.
Oh, no. You've
Oh,
had
yeah, yes,
people
yes,
in
yes.
those.
We
You've
took
had
action.
people in those trailers complaining. 2 people have cancer. 1 had a very autoimmune
All right,
system.
Ms. Cross, we're not talking about people's health.
We are talking about
No,
people's
we're-
health.
we're not-
You were
we're
not
not
supposed
disclosing
to.
people's private
You were
health
not
concerns.
supposed to have anybody in those trailers since after 2013. That's what the document says.
That's
and
not
you
true.
were not
because
getting
the
the
district
approval.
the district did get permission from the State Department of Education.
No, you
To
didn't.
continue
I
using
just
those.
went and got the documents.
Every year.
Ralph, prove it.
Every year.
Prove it. There's nothing signed. Everything that came back, there's nothing signed.
Okay.
So you need to prove it.
All right, Ms.
Somebody
Cross.
needs to be held accountable.
Thank you.
Kathleen Duranwell Township. That is a tough act to follow. First, I wanted to mention, because you did the Howell contract, I'm going to say again that that contract is poorly drafted and fraught with mistakes. The Board of Education does not even own the land that they're making the subject of the lease. The town that does own the land, the documents that have been OPRA'd from the town show that the town has not been put on notice of any subletting, nor does it allow any subletting. So we don't even know that the lease is legal. I'd also like to point out one more time, in the hopes that you find legal advice, to go over the contract again, especially in terms of environmental liability. The provision as now drafted exposes Wall Township to potentially unlimited environmental damages. It does not underground contamination from oil and water. You will not be able to distinguish what came from the Howell buses and what came from the Wall buses. The unlimited liability provision in there for environmental contamination is problematic. It provides that our liability is unlimited. That means we don't get to go after Howell and say, you existed on this land for 20 years and contaminated it, and then we came along for 1 year, and now we are now 100% liable for all the damages. And oil and gas that come from bus depots and bus garages contaminates groundwater. And that is a very high-risk, expensive liability. I pointed these out multiple times. I had begged the board that night not to sign it until somebody had reviewed it again. Get a second opinion if you need to. I'm giving you gratuitous advice, but it's born of a lot of years of experience. And I also wanted to make sure, especially with the new members on the board, as to OPRA requests. I don't know whether the board is aware, the board members are aware, that it is their job to watch Brian in his fulfillment of his duties as records custodian. So when I hear someone like Betsy Cross, whether you like her personally or not like her personally, or find her irritating or love what she says, doesn't matter. What I hear as an attorney is that he is failing to meet his obligation under the law constantly. He is not delivering the requested documents on time, nor is he doing it in the proper method. So, for example, the documents that he attempted to hand to Betsy Cross, completely improper under state law. You don't get to do it that way. He has to record it. He has to give a cover sheet documenting what it's in response to. It's not okay to just fly by the seat of your pants. It doesn't work that way. So that's what Betsy is saying. When I hear it, and I hear it piling up like that, you have a problem. I'm urging the board to read up on it, consult, preferably with someone who doesn't snicker when somebody mentions OPRA. consult and find out what I'm talking about is real, and I don't want you caught on the wrong side of that issue. Also, when Brian makes mistakes like that, the board and the school district are vulnerable to attack, both on your process and being dragged to court, and it's running up bills. I personally don't like to see it. It's not necessary. He should be doing his job. You may feel sympathetic to him, but it's the requirement of democracy that he provide these documents. Every school district in the state has a gadfly. If you think you're unique in dealing with people coming up here and talking or complaining, you're wrong. I read the minutes from 100 school districts all the time, and it happens all the time. You are not the only school district, but this is one where I'm seeing over and over again a failure to comply with the law. That's what's going on here. That's what she's complaining of, and she's right to complain. Your duty is to oversee him, get him on the ball. Needs to be done. Now, when you mentioned that the trailers were bought used, I'm kind of curious. I'm asking this, and I don't have a scientific background specifically in mold either, or insect or vermin infestations. But when they were bought used, did the mold or any of these infestations exist at the time they were bought?
Mr. Smythe, do you have any knowledge of anything that was going on with them, or?
I wasn't the architect, the engineer, or the inspectors inspecting the trailers, so I would not be in a position to respond to that.
Is he making the representation now that they were properly inspected and these things didn't exist, or
No,
he was assured?
that's not what he said.
Okay,
He just
was-
said that he's none of those professions, so
Okay.
it wasn't his job.
So did he have, well, whose job was it to inspect the trailers when we got them to make sure they were okay when we got them? These could all be pre-existing problems from where I sit. So how do we know?
It's
we
many
don't.
it's many years ago. So
Well,
I
I'm asking you
guess
to
the
ask him.
answer
Maybe he knows whether the consultant dealt with this issue. Did somebody inspect the trailers for mold, vermin, insect infestations prior to us bringing them onto our land and putting teachers and students there?
Mr. Smythe, are you aware of where we got these trailers from? Was there a physical inspection done of them by any professionals to see if they were, if there were any issues with them?
I can't speak to what was done in 2007 by the consultants at this time.
Okay.
So we don't know?
We don't know.
It could have been one of the worst decisions he ever made. Okay. Pointing it out. The lack of accountability is appalling, and hiding behind a date makes me, as a parent here, very unhappy. I also am sorry that you chose to reveal the timeline so late that I didn't get to see it till I get here. I always feel like I'm doing everything in the last 3 minutes, and then it's hard, whether the board realizes it or not, to get up here, formulate your thoughts, and to spit it all out addressing a wide range of topics when you only get a few minutes to look at the thing. But the timeline that Mr. Smythe prepared shows that the dates are mismatched to me, because Mr. Romano sat here and he said that the COCO vendor, the contractor, came here and inspected the outside only. If you actually read the proposal, they inspected inside. They talk extensively and provide for the fixing of the inside damages. So this school board, Mr. Smythe and Mr. Romano, were on notice as of June 7th, 2009, about severely deteriorated interior areas, and the proposal included the big proposal. I'm referring to the $65,000 first proposal. As of that moment, the list of things that were wrong and needed to be repaired pretty much encompasses everything I've heard since then. So at that moment, when I sit here and read it, I'm like, okay, we got problems. We got problems. We need new windows. We need new gutters to direct the rain away from the walls where it's leaking through. We have a severely deteriorated interior where the floor...
We are aware of the problems that were associated with that.
No, but the inconsistency is Mr. Romano just said tonight that nobody checked the inside. That cannot be true. I'm looking right at the proposal that's attached to the minutes, the agenda for tonight, and says interior. Not true. So we have a problem, a bigger problem than you realize. Is there a way Mr. Romano can reconcile this for us?
It's not hard for a contractor to look at a building, get square footage, okay, and then determine estimate the amount of square footage, and if possibly some subflooring and some walls need to be removed, they can come up with a price. It's not rocket science.
It really is. If you read this, you'll see how ridiculous what he just said is. The proof is here. I'm not making it up. It's in this. And that makes me feel very distressed. I know you think it's funny, and I'm not a contractor, but he's smirking at me, and I really resent it because I'm a mom who cares about the kids in Wall. I'm reading here. He didn't know that how can you see the flooring? It was under carpet. He couldn't see it. It can't be true. He cannot be telling you the truth. And he did it. He just did it twice. And I find it appalling. I really do. But there's more red flags than that. That's just the first one. The difference in the proposals, and I would like to see if he can reconcile them. The difference in the proposals were, the differences between the two proposals, between RIS and then the first one, Mr. Coco. I'm just going to list very quickly what it was. There was no, the second one, the first one was high, and everyone's like, we're not using them. We're going to use the cheaper one. That's cheaper by $40,000, but it didn't include fixing the rotted wood. It didn't include exterior trim. It didn't include skirting. It didn't include soffits, didn't include vents, no gutters or leaders, no screens on the windows, no interior floors, no carpet removal, no dumpster, no demolition, no new subfloor, no repairs of rotted wood.
All right, Ms. Durant, what is the point we're getting to?
I think you need to look. I'll make it as a point rather than a question, since you asked. Bidding. You guys were aware with the first $65,000 bid that this was a big job, probably going to be over $40,000 to be done right. And it was documented for you by the first proposal. Then all of a sudden you're going out and getting $17,000 and $20,000. I'm saying to you, suggesting to you that you look at this carefully because it looks like, quacks like, and walks like a duck to avoid bidding. Because when I see that kind of discrepancy, and that first proposal was really nicely done and it detailed everything that was wrong, you and Mr. Smythe and Mr. Romano knew what was wrong. When I see the following bids come in at 20 and it only says fix the outside vinyl and doesn't include any of the other necessary work, and then he says, Mr. Smythe and Mr. Romano say, we don't have to bid because it's so cheap, it's a $20,000 job. It's not. It's not true.
Okay, well, to correct you, that the board, when our professionals go out to get pricing, we don't see every price that comes in, because there's sometimes on certain issues where they reach out to 10 different contractors and maybe only a few get back. Well, there's only 3 in this situation, but we don't know what everybody does or who comes out. So
you get bids because it's the law. And I'm telling you, it's a very high probability here that the law was not followed and that was done on purpose, and it placed the lives of both teachers and students in jeopardy. I really think you have to look at it hard because the process here is so flawed. You guys knew, he knew, June 7th, there was a big problem. And they knew it was interior and exterior, and it was no $17,000 paint job.
well, us guys did not know.
You didn't get to see the bids?
They were going out for bids or quotes or getting pricing, and we weren't aware of everything that was going on because it's their job to go out and get the numbers and come report back.
Yeah, that you told me that. You said
Right.
that to Ms. Cross. You said their job's to go get a floor somehow, get the whole process started, right? And that's what this 65 was. You said Mr. Romano went out with the guy who went to West Belmar, did a good job, to say, hey, let's get this started. Let's get a baseline. What needs to get done? Okay?
Well-
So it comes back. So you guys got told about the 65,000. That's your baseline.
We weren't told about the 65,000.
Yes, you were. It's in your own package there.
That's the problem. Therein lies the rub. With the crowd calling in behind me, that's what I'm trying to drive home. There is a major financial problem. I don't want the board on the wrong side of it. Okay, I'm urging you to look at this carefully because I want you on the right side. I don't want to end up with Wall spending a lot of money unnecessarily again for another lawsuit. I'm trying to be very kind, and I'm trying to tell you now in advance, as I have with every issue, and as calm a way as I can, that there's a mistake being made. The process now to fix it is deeper than just not putting the kids in the trailer. It's bigger than that. There's a problem here and there are red flags. Please, I'm asking the board to look at it. That's all I'm saying, because the flags are significant and they are real. They are not pretend, they're all right in the numbers. And if I can put it together in 5 minutes tonight, I will do more when I dig. So I'm asking the board to look too, so that when we have the next conversation about it, it's an in-depth one, maybe even more educated on my end. I do think there's a problem. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
And just to point out, again, the initial contractor was hired under the co-op, or was a co-op vendor. When he discontinued doing work on the trailers, we obtained multiple quotes, and we awarded the work that needed to be done based on a quote within New Jersey Public Contracts Law. And the work that the contractor was scheduled to do was to make the trailers safe for the return of students and staff for the start of school.
Ms. Cross, please do not call out. Yes, sir.
Hi, John Lamagra. I live on Sharp Road. My son is a fifth grader in Central School. I'm sitting here, and this is only my second meeting ever. So it's really tough to sit here and listen to all this stuff. And to tell you the truth, Mr. Adonisio, we don't trust you guys. We don't.
We know that, and that's
I know,
that's why we're working to change things.
You haven't proved it. I work for a small insurance company in the Midwest. We have a ticketing system. I swear, we go and we read the tickets and we laugh. The light is flickering in the bathroom. This and that. But I'm telling you that this can be resolved. You can resolve this with these ticketing systems. I know how they work. I've been in IT for 50 years. Well, almost 50 years. I don't want to give my age away. But we have a product called ServiceNow. Same thing. Tickets for this, tickets for that. We write 1,000 tickets a week. It can be done. And the teachers can do it. It's not that hard. So it should be done. And Mr. Romano, I know that you said that you have your supervisors writing the tickets. But what's to say that the supervisor go, oh, that's a stupid thing. I'm not going to write a ticket for that. And then the teacher who's sitting there going, it's important to me, never gets her ticket written or looked at or anything. So this is what I'm talking about, is that there's got to be a change in the attitude of the people here. Okay? I did hear one thing that I was a little concerned about. Someone told me that, and I don't know if this is true, but someone told me that, and Mr. Romano, you might be able to address this, but that they pulled up a carpet in one of the classrooms, and they found out that something was asbestos underneath it, and they just closed the carpet back up. Is that just a rumor?
I've never heard that, Mr. Romano.
Well, we have VAT tile. That's encapsulated.
So the tile under the carpet was
carpet.
asbestos tile?
The tile under the carpet is asbestos tile. So
Okay.
if you want to remove a carpet, you can't just pull it up because the tile will break into pieces. That would be an asbestos abatement. So
Okay.
yes,
No, I
that would
understand
be
that.
a situation that could have happened.
Yeah, no, I heard of that also, and that's common everywhere, but or a lot of the older schools anyway.
Just about every school in the district in Wall has had it.
Yeah.
And we've done continual abatement as things have come up and, tiles break and so everything's been done properly.
Right. Now, I also, and I think I spoke of this the last time, is that the kids were telling me that some of the classrooms really smell. And not even in the trailers. I'm talking about classrooms, and I can only address Central School. But I think there was a woman here last week who said she had mold in her classroom in Allenwood, I think. But anyway, this is, maybe we need to do something more to look into these smells. And we're counting on you guys, as we say in Jersey City, to look into this and not to ignore us, and to be upfront. We know there's going to be problems. And as I said last time with Mrs. Dyer, if she had just sent the email as soon as we found out about this, maybe that would have eased tensions a little bit. But it looks as if you were hiding it. And this is what the two young ladies who were speaking before me were talking about. It looks as if you're hiding it. And I know that, and I believe you, that you say you're going to try to change the culture. I think the culture needs to be changed.
Well, we are trying hard, and that's why, after 5 minutes, we're not cutting people off, because certainly I want to hear what you have to say, the board wants to hear. I want to hear the good stuff you have to say, and I want to hear the bad stuff you have to say. So that's very important. And, addressing, just because you mentioned it, the smell issue, that is something we have heard. And we are 100% committed to figuring out the best way going forward that we can address all these issues, one of which is going to be sitting down with the WTEA's Health and Safety Committee. I'm not sure if you were here when we discussed that.
Opergard, yeah.
Okay, so that's something we're going to do. They're going to find out from, the shoes on the ground what's going on. They'll report it back to us, and we're going to address it because, again, we are volunteers, so we don't have anything to hide. We're here to do the best for the children, for the staff, and for the community. So
and I understand,
that's what's most important.
And I'm behind you in that matter. But you got to be more transparent with us. We have to know. We have to know. And we have to know right away.
Well, since this is, and just to inform you, since this is your second meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay. This committee right here normally would be our Finance and Facilities Committee, which would be made up of 4 board members, the business administrator, facilities manager, and the superintendent. And we would generally meet in a conference room. And as Ms. Cross talked about the minutes, we'd write minutes based on the things said. No public would be there, and that would be it. It's this board's feeling going forward that these meetings are going to be held in public, so everybody can hear what's going on, and then you can get up at a meeting and say, I agree with you or I disagree. And
I thank you for that.
And that's what we want to do. So that's the steps we're taking to make things more transparent.
And one last thing before I sit down again is that the young lady spoke about contracts. And pardon me, but I thought Mrs. Dyer's contract was ridiculous, especially the out clause, where you had to give her a year notice. Is that true? Who wrote that? Who's the lawyer who wrote that? Teachers don't get that, right? Teachers don't get it. What, they get 60 days for teachers?
Not sure.
Whoever wrote that, that is like the golden parachute. And then if you don't give it to her in a year, correct me if I'm wrong, if you don't notify her within a year or after a year, she gets 5 years or 2 years or something like that automatically?
It's the law.
It's the law? That's a law?
It is.
Well, that's a ridiculous law.
You live in the state of New Jersey.
I do.
Okay.
There's a lot of ridiculous laws. You're right. Yeah. But I mean, that is kind of silly. And you got to,
The board can only do what the law says it can do. I mean, and unfortunately, when you're talking about school law, there's a lot of things that you scratch your head and say, well, it doesn't necessarily make sense, but that's the law, and we have to follow them and certainly navigate it the best way we can.
So the law says that you have to give the superintendent a year's notice.
No, the law says that the superintendent is required, every superintendent, there's a minimum of 1 month notice for each year of the contract. That's the minimum.
Okay.
However, what the law says, and what I said the law, when I was correcting what you were asking,
Right.
is if you don't provide the notice within the time period in the contract,
Okay.
it's an automatic renewal of the term of the contract. That's the law.
So if you original contract was 5 years, you have 5 months to
Minimally.
minimum 5 months
That
to
is correct.
notify her that she's not going to have her contract renewed.
That is correct.
And if you don't do it, she gets another 5 years.
That is correct.
That's any superintendent, anywhere.
That's all I can say about that.
That's not this superintendent, that's the law.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Joe Martone, Wall Township resident. every meeting I come here, we're talking about the trailers. This board does a lot of talking, and they do very little action. Why don't you do yourselves, you're like a glutton for punishment. Betsy's not going away. These parents aren't going away. Why don't you do yourselves a favor, declare an emergency, and demo the trailers and get them out of there? You're wasting time, you're wasting money. Gentleman was here last meeting and said it's a money pit, and it is a money pit. You got the architect, you have the environmental engineer, you have a bunch of professionals, and nothing's getting done. Everybody knows that the bidding process was circumvented. There's no doubt about that. There's two reasons you circumvent the bidding process. One is if you're trying to steer the contract to a vendor you want, or the other is you're trying to save money for the board, for the district. That way you don't have to hire an architect to bid plans, and you don't have to have an attorney review. Maybe you were trying to save money. Maybe you're trying to steer it to a contractor you like. I don't know. But you circumvented the bidding laws. Shouldn't be done. You should get rid of those trailers. You passed a resolution saying the students won't go in there this year. They'll never go back there. The parents said at the last meeting they're not going to let their children go in those trailers again.
The board said that.
They said the resolution said for 1 year.
No, the board said we're never going to put children back in those trailers.
Good.
And also to clarify something else you said, the board did not circumvent any bidding. Again, that's not our job. We don't go out for bids or quotes. We approve money to be spent, but we did not circumvent anything.
You don't think the bidding law was circumvented here? Are you kidding me?
No.
The bidding threshold is 40,000. You sent a contractor out there to look at it, and he gave you a price of 65,000. So right then, you knew you had to bid it. You should have bid it to do it right. But you didn't want to do it that way. You said, oh, only do this, only do that. And then you know what? I'll come back for a change order later on. It will be more. That's why Mr. Smite transferred $60,000 to that account.
For clarification.
I think this board is trying to do a good job. You're being transparent, and you should be commended for that. And I know it's tough dealing with the public.
It's not tough dealing with the public.
Oh, it is tough dealing with the public.
No, we're again, I'm going to say it again, and we'll keep saying it. We are volunteers. We believe in transparency. There's probably 95% of the stuff we do can be done in public. The only thing we can't do is personnel and litigation. Those are the only things that we have to talk about in executive session. Everything else can be out here, and we want everybody to be aware of what's going on, because it's your money. Start
taking some action. These trailers are nothing but a pain in the neck to you guys and to the whole district. Personally, I think a lot of people here won't agree with me, but I think they're flogging a dead horse. The students aren't going into trailers. Get rid of the trailers. Good money after bad's going in these trailers for no reason. And the other thing, you know, I'm looking at the board there, and it's kind of reduced. I'm sure it looks like you're short 3 members.
Yes.
Who decides how many members are on the board?
The law, correct? State law?
Well, it could be 5, 7.
5 or 5, 7, 9 apparently, but
Right.
this board is set up as a 9-member board.
Maybe it should be set up as a 5-member board.
I don't know how that works.
I think things would move a lot smoother.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smythe?
Just to clarify, with regard to Central School trailers and a transfer, there was not a transfer of $60,000. There was a transfer of $30,000 for the purpose of the renovations to the classroom trailers.
Thank you. No, please do not yell out. Ms.
And
Cross, you've had almost 40 minutes at this point.
Right, I just want to go over the purchasing. Your district policy is called 6320, purchases subject to bid. The
All right,
Board
Ms.
of
Cross,
Education.
we are aware of what it is. We
No,
have
you're not
counsel
aware
here.
because
No,
you just
Ms.
said
Cross,
that
we
you
have
just went for
counsel
quotes.
that guides us in this
I'd like
matter.
to read this on the
No,
record.
Ms. Cross.
The Board of Education
Ms.
directs
Cross.
the establishment and conduct of bidding procedures that serve the public interest and provide each qualified vendor an equal opportunity to furnish goods and services to the district.
All right.
You are not following your own policy.
Thank you.
Somebody needs to be held accountable.
You've said
You
that.
cannot be
Ms. Cross, do
running
you
a
have any other questions?
$77
Because you're
million
repeating the
school
same stuff
district.
you've said over and over again.
Here's your district
All right, Ms.
policy on
Cross,
cooperative
Ms. Cross,
purchasing.
Ms. Cross,
6440.
are you just going to be rude to me? Because I've been very
I'm gonna
polite to you.
read it.
No, Ms. Cross,
You
you're
just
not going
said
to read
that
it.
we can go over
No.
the time limit.
Ms. Cross.
The Board of
Ms. Cross,
Education
that's it.
recognizes
Ms.
the
Cross, you're
centralized
not- you are
cooperative
done, Ms. Cross.
purchasing tends to maximize the value received for
Ms.
each
Cross.
dollar spent.
Is
The
there anybody else in the
administration is
audience that would like to
encouraged
speak this
seek
evening?
savings. You should need to follow your own policies.
Okay,
You have
Ms.
one
Cross,
for
we know what our
bidding,
policies are. We have
and
legal.
no, you don't know what they are,
Okay,
Ralph, because you
thank
just
you.
said that it was okay for him to do quotes. It was not okay. He needed
Right.
to do a proper bid, and it needed to be open in public. Then we would have found out all these problems without the parents
We have an
getting-
attorney that will instruct us the correct way to do things,
And
we
Mr.
will have a
Gross
conversation.
should not have been rehired. You did vote for him, Mr. Adonisio. He should not have been rehired.
Thank you.
We got very bad legal advice.
Thank you, Ms. Cross.
Yep.
Seeing nobody else for public comment, I'm going to close public comment. Is there anything else this evening, ladies and gentlemen? No?
Just
Yes.
one or two things real
Sure.
quick. So one of the things is that I would like to just sort of say is there's a lot of energy out there. Some of it's positive energy, some of it's sort of negative energy and all these different things. I just hope that when the referendum comes through, that all of that energy gets directed in a positive manner, because if we're trying to go for a referendum,
What referendum? How much?
we're trying to go.
I mean, you're talking about it. Say how much?
There's nothing here, okay? There's no referendum on the books at this point in time. But we've said a couple different times that we would like to try to put a referendum through at some point in time.
Never
All right?
happened.
So what I would say is this, is if we're gonna, if we have folks that are going to be upset about conditions in the schools and different things like that, there's going to be, I would hope that the energy that is brought towards this is also turned around to improve the school at this point in time as well. Right? So all of these things we are very cognizant of, and we're trying as best as we can here to improve circumstances of the school, to improve transparency on the board, to improve the manner in which people in the community receive this Board of Education. And what I would hope, and one of the things that when I initially ran, was to try to get the community involved, to get our folks that are working in our district involved, and to bring everybody together for a common goal and a common cause, which is a great school district. And in the end, one of the things that I would say is if you're going to say, well, it'll never happen, well, there's a lot of things that you're asking for and you're wanting, improved in the district. And a lot of those things aren't going to be, accomplished in just normal budgets. So if it's possible for us to understand and have a common mentality of what we want for this school district.
You can't skirt all the bidding process when you have another $16 million.
This is not it's not anything individual. What I'm trying to do is appeal to the energy, to be able to focus that energy and move it towards a positive direction for this board and towards a district. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, could you just go over that procedure for getting rid of the trailers with our involvement with the State Department of Education? It seems to get lost in the discussion. We have to do certain things with the state before we can do anything.
So I guess, Mr. Smythe, every year, how does the whole process work? The trailers every year have to be renewed, correct? So can you kind of give that?
Well, to use the trailers, you need to submit to the county executive superintendent for approval to use them as a temporary space. If we're looking to remove them off-site, we need to demonstrate to the Department of Education that we can house those students within the building. And that would be what we would hire our architect for, to submit those documents to the Department of Education, demonstrating our capacity. That's part of what is being done as part of the long-range facility plan, not only as a facility condition assessment, it's also a functional capacity determination, which is greatly determined based on how you use your spaces, not just the square footage of those spaces. So we would have to submit to regardless of what's done with the trailers, we'd have to submit to the Department of Education. But in removing them, we'd have to demonstrate that we can house the students within the building. And there would be a cost, and we'd hire the architect to not only submit that to the Department of Education with regard to the demonstrating we have the capacity, but then also to develop the specifications, the plans and specs, to have them removed from the property, and to restore the property to the condition prior to them being located there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Krupa?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We didn't get to this point overnight, and that's a simple statement, but it's a very complex issue, what we're dealing with. I do appreciate very much what you said in terms of a positive energy and going towards constructing solutions that will benefit the community and, most importantly, our students. We're stewards of the future. Everybody that sat in this seat past was a steward of the future. And I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, there were mistakes made, and we're paying the price for it now. And it's not a stretch to say, especially after the outcry and the testimony that we've heard over the past couple of weeks, that there are facilities issues. And while I understand the public's distrust and have concern for that as equally as you do, there are probably similar thoughts amongst board members and dissimilar thoughts amongst board members. We have to get to the truth of the matter. That is clear. But in essence, the stewardship piece is the most important thing, and it has to be done in an environment where feasibly, economically, we are being responsible, and the things that we are considering are feasible. But the future of our community, and again, our students most importantly, is dependent upon the schools. And I think that we're starting to see the realization of that, and I'm hoping that we can recruit everybody to that future plan, whatever it may be, whether it's a small referendum, a big referendum, but there is clearly a need, and it isn't going to get taken care of by an annual school budget. It's just not going to happen. And I've been in districts that have not. And I have been in districts that have. And every child deserves halves. And we have to make that happen. It's not going to be easy. There are going to be things that are painful about it. But that is why I got on this board. And every time I sit here, I read what the state of New Jersey Department of Education's Code of Ethics is for the school board. So I'm reminded, not only by you, but by myself and what's written here. I am reminded by the picture of my children who attend the schools. And I'm going to stay the course, and we're going to get to the bottom of things. But it's going to take time. And I just hope that we can all get together on this. whether it's behind a referendum, whether it's behind, a different way to budget, I don't know, but we need to work together on this. And I appreciate that you are allowing the public to the committee meetings of the Board of Ed to have this input. It's important. But I'm speaking out now, and that's my piece.
Thank you. And just, it's just not me that's allowing it. I mean, it was the consensus of every individual sitting here, because I went to everybody and asked them, what is your feeling of having the committee meetings in public? And everybody said absolutely yes. So that's important. So everybody here gets a piece of the credit or a piece of the criticism for that. Hopefully it's credit, but we'll try to end on a positive note. Anybody else?
I do have two positives then. I want to compliment Dr. Gleason and her team for the new teacher orientation, which I attended about a week ago. It was a small class, but I think it's important to note the good work that is done by our staff. And I don't know everybody that was on your team, but I know it was a team, and I appreciate that. And we have to encourage and support our teachers. I also want to encourage people to support the Crimson Knight Foundation, which is a model that other school districts use, in where they are not able to afford all of the things that are within the normal budget, to seek those individuals out that are in leadership positions, such as Mike Parnell. They are also volunteers, and they are working hard to add to the coffers. It is not to be seen as a kitty for the school board or for the administrators. That is not at all what it is. It is an enhancement. The teachers and the union and the administrators should all have as well as the parents, should have a hand in what that money is for eventually, depending on how much is raised. But it is the way of the world now, and I hope you can support them.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Their information's on our website.
Yes, and they have the fundraiser scheduled for, I believe it's October, the bonfire,
Is it
maybe
yeah.
October 10th possibly.
Well, I'm getting it, Ralph.
Unfortunately, last year it started, and then we had a little bout of rain.
Well, it's new.
But
I can't see.
It is on the website.
Yes.
So, anybody else? Right?
Just wanted to mention that we look forward going to back to school nights, being present in the schools, meeting the teachers, supporting our teachers and administrators. So
Anticipate good things coming from that. All good? Motion to adjourn.
I'll
So
make the
moved.
motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good evening.